Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Michael Haight. Michael Haight was born on January 7, 1980, in Seattle, Washington. As a child, his family moved to Cedar City, Utah. As a child, Michael enjoyed regular kid activities like baseball, basketball, and soccer. He was also an Eagle Scout and did well in school. After graduating from high school in 1998, Michael spent a summer working at a fish plant in Alaska. He quickly rose to the position of line manager, supervising over a dozen people. His work ethic and dedication were recognized, leading to his promotion. A hardworking member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Michael went on a mission trip to southern Brazil. This experience strengthened his faith and commitment to his community. After returning to the United States, Michael attended Southern Utah University, graduating with a business degree in 2004. While at the university, Michael met his future wife, Tasha Earl. They fell in love and were married at St. George's Temple on May 10, 2003. Michael seemed to be the epitome of a hardworking husband and father. He coached his children's sports teams, attended school concerts, and spent time with them skiing and doing projects in the garage. However, on January 4, 2023, a shocking discovery exposed the dark reality of Michael's family life. That day, police found 8 bodies in Michael's home, leaving police and neighbors stunned and baffled. The alarm was raised when Tasha Haight missed an online appointment and her husband Michael did not show up for work, prompting worried co-workers to call the police and request a welfare check at the family's home. Officers went to Michael's Enoch home, but no one answered when they knocked. Upon further inspection, the home appeared to be empty. Since Michael's family had 5 children, officers contacted the Iron County School District to check if any children were at school. They discovered that no children were there. When officers arrived at Michael's home, the Michaels lived in a 1-story home with a basement. Detectives arrived shortly after the home was designated a crime scene. Upon entering the master bedroom, they found 4-year-old Gavin lying face down, his head turned to the left. One of his arms was propped up under his head on a pillow, and a blanket partially covered his body. Tasha was similarly covered, with only part of her body under the blanket. On the other side of the bed, police found an older woman, later identified as Gail Earl, Tasha's mother. Gail was lying on her back with her head on a pillow, and was also partially covered with a blanket, as were her daughter and grandson. When police searched Michael's home, they came across Bryn's room. Inside, they found the 12-year-old girl lying on the bed, slightly elevated and partially covered with a blanket. When they entered Amon's room, police found a 7-year-old boy lying face down in the corner. Notably, unlike his siblings, he had no pillow or blanket. Sienna, Amon's twin sister, was found in her bedroom, lying on her left side on the bed with her head on a pillow, covered with a blanket. Michael's oldest child, Macy, 17, was also found on the bed, her head on a pillow and her body covered with a blanket. Police later located Michael in the basement gym, where he was lying on a sleeping bag. Each of the 8 victims suffered fatal gunshot wounds. It didn't take long for police to identify Michael Haight as the prime suspect. They believe he killed his wife, mother-in-law, and 5 children before taking his own life. As the investigation began, a neighbor shared important information that helped police create a timeline of events. The neighbor reported that she woke up at 3:30 a.m. to use the bathroom and heard a loud bang that sounded like fireworks. However, she knew that the day fireworks were allowed in the neighborhood had passed, which made her feel uneasy. The neighbor went on to say that after the first bang, she heard 2 more bangs in quick succession. This noise was followed by a short pause, then several more bangs. Police suspect that the loud noises the neighbor heard around 3:30 a.m. were related to the brutal murder that occurred that night, which they believe was committed by Michael. During the investigation, police learned that a non-family member had reported the abuse to the Department of Child Services in 2020. The person spoke with Macy, then 14, and she shared her fears about her father, leading to a further investigation into the Michael family. After receiving the report, child welfare and child protection agencies interviewed Macy and her parents separately. During Macy's interview, she shared alarming details. She mentioned instances where her father choked her, leaving her in fear for her life. Macy revealed that these violent incidents began in 2017. One incident involved her father grabbing her by the shoulders and pushing her against a piece of wooden furniture. When police spoke with Macy's father, Michael, he denied harming his daughter. He downplayed the seriousness of the incidents Macy described, calling them a misunderstanding. Michael attributed his emotional state to the death of his father and his brother's recent divorce. Michael admitted to taking his frustrations out on his eldest daughter. However, his wife, Tasha, chose not to file a criminal complaint against him. After an investigation, Child Protective Services, the Enoch Police Department, and the Iron County District Attorney's Office also decided not to prosecute because the case did not meet the criteria for prosecution. Additionally, a fatality assessment was conducted with Tasha, and according to her response, it did not indicate that her relationship with Michael was fatal. However, victim support services were provided to Tasha and the children in the months after the case was opened. Through conversations with Tasha's friends, the police developed a different view of Michael than the one he presented to the public. When visiting Tasha, her friends would often leave the kitchen faucet on to hide their conversations because Tasha suspected Michael was eavesdropping. To avoid giving Michael a reason to yell at Tasha, her friends would also help her with housework. Whenever they texted Tasha, she would reply with short, positive messages, possibly knowing that Michael might be reading them. This behavior suggested that Tasha was trying to maintain a positive appearance in front of Michael, implying that their marriage was not in trouble. Police investigating the case discovered that Michael displayed a high level of control over his wife, Tasha. He exercised this control in a variety of ways, including confiscating her car keys and phone to restrict her freedom. Additionally, Michael's reaction when Tasha purchased a $30 rug from Walmart to replace her dirty carpet raised further suspicions about his behavior. Tasha needed to buy a rug, but her husband, Michael, was angry and said it was a waste of money. Tasha talked to her friends about how her 7-year-old son, Amon, had begun to act like his father, imitating his father's bad behavior. When Tasha asked Amon to do something, he would say, "That's not my job," which worried Tasha because it showed that Amon was not taking responsibility and was not listening to her. This is similar to how Michael often ignores or dismisses Tasha's requests, and it seems that Amon is adopting similar habits. In 2022, Tasha made the rare decision to get a manicure as an act of self-care. However, her husband, Michael, objected and tried to limit her freedom. Despite this, Tasha still felt younger and more confident after getting her nails done. She decided to make this a monthly habit, but Michael strongly objected because of cost concerns. Tasha explained that it would only cost $25 a month, but Michael was still unconvinced. He argued that spending money on her nails would take away from the needs of her children, demonstrating a controlling attitude and a strong sense of financial responsibility. At the same time, Tasha began taking better care of herself and losing weight. This came after years of her husband, Michael, calling her fat and ugly. However, instead of being supportive, Michael becomes angry when she loses weight. He accuses her of being unfaithful, trying to explain away her change in appearance. Michael's controlling behavior escalates as he tries to order Tasha to stop losing weight. He begs her to stop because he fears that other men will find her attractive. This demand stems from his own deep insecurities and his need to control his wife's body and actions. Tasha's friends report an incident involving the family's kitchen table to the police. The table is broken and Tasha needs to replace it. However, her husband, Michael, refuses to provide the necessary funds. Frustrated by the situation, Tasha decides to take matters into her own hands. She decides to refurbish the old table, hoping to improve its appearance and functionality. Michael is unhappy with this decision because Tasha did not ask for his permission. This is not the first time this has happened. During the holiday season, Michael was very frugal with the family finances. Despite earning a substantial income from his job at Haight, he only gave $100 to each child for Christmas gifts. Tasha always wanted to give her children a full Christmas, but Michael's reluctance to add money made this difficult. He believed his income was legitimate and did not feel the need to provide more for the family. Michael's intense focus on reducing waste and conserving resources leads him to impose strict household rules on Tasha. She is required to wash and reuse plastic bags, no matter how many times they have been used. This adds to Tasha's responsibilities, leaving her feeling overwhelmed. Additionally, Michael's need for control also affects Tasha's hygiene and childcare habits. Michael requires Tasha to use wipes and, claiming that it is better for the environment and will save money. However, this makes Tasha feel uncomfortable and stressed. If she does not follow Michael's instructions, he will punish her severely. He makes it clear that disobedience will lead to a lot of trouble for her. This threat creates a sense of fear and submission in Tasha, leaving her with no choice but to comply with Michael's demands. According to Tasha's friends, she shared with them that Michael's abuse was initially directed at her during their marriage. However, in the late 2010s, Michael began abusing their children as well. Macy suffered greatly as the abuse escalated. Michael put a lot of pressure on Macy to get straight A's. The burden of these unrealistic expectations became too much for Macy to bear. Macy's friends reported another disturbing incident to the police. One evening, Michael came home to find Macy sitting with her head in her mother's lap. He became angry and told Macy to get up and clean her room. This left Macy deeply disturbed, as she recalled looking into her father's eyes and seeing hatred and evil. Police also discovered an incident involving 7-year-old Briley, who was playing with a changing table and would not stop when Michael told her to stop. This led Michael to blame his wife, Tasha, for their children's behavior, calling them the worst kids in the world, disrespectful and horrible. Furthermore, Michael would insult Tasha, calling her fat and ugly, all in front of their 5 children. Tasha decided to end her 20-year marriage to Michael after his abusive behavior and uncontrollable rages. This event made her realize the harm it was causing their children, and she knew she had to leave the marriage. Although the divorce was difficult for Tasha after 2 decades together, she prioritized the safety and well-being of her children over her commitment to the marriage. On December 21, 2022, Tasha filed for divorce from her husband, Michael. However, she requested that the divorce papers be delivered after the holidays, wanting one last normal Christmas for her 5 children before separating. Tasha anticipated that Michael's behavior would worsen once the papers were delivered, and she sought to shield their children from potential repercussions during the holidays. The divorce papers were delivered to Michael at his office on December 27th. Michael contacted Tasha and conversed as if nothing out of the ordinary had happened. During the call, he asked Tasha to leave their home but demanded that she leave their children behind. Tasha was adamant that she would not leave without the children. Tasha took the children to her mother's house in Lynn, Utah, despite Michael's objections. That evening, Michael went to his mother-in-law's house and asked Tasha to go out with him, but she refused. Tasha told friends that she felt uneasy being alone with Michael. After Tasha filed for divorce, her mother, Gail Earl, moved in to support Tasha and the children. However, Michael's behavior made the situation worse. Instead of leaving the house, Michael moved into the basement, which also served as a gym. He slept on a sleeping bag on the floor, used a pillow, and hung his clothes on a hanger on a couch outside the door. Tasha shared her concerns with her friends about a major problem she had discovered. She discovered that $220,000 had disappeared from the children's savings accounts. After further investigation, she discovered that Michael was responsible for secretly transferring money without telling her. Additionally, Tasha inherited several weapons from her late father, including shotguns and handguns. However, in early January 2023, she noticed that all of these weapons were missing from her home. A subsequent investigation revealed that Michael had taken these weapons, leaving Tasha and her family unprotected and vulnerable in the event of an emergency. Macy, the eldest daughter of Michael and Tasha, has told several friends that she supports her parents' divorce. She feels that the presence of her father, Michael, in the home has caused tension and she wishes for peace in the separation. Macy has even taken steps to document her father's behavior, secretly recording him with a hidden phone when he acts erratically. She has confided to a friend that she is gathering evidence to support her parents' divorce. However, her mother, Tasha, found the phone and took it away. Macy's younger sister, Briley, faced a difficult home life due to constant trouble. To escape, Briley often went to a neighbor's house, where she found comfort in playing with the neighbor's grandchildren, who were children about her age. She told a friend that she was really relieved when her parents got divorced and was even looking forward to buying some new books, but she didn't dare tell her father because she was afraid he would be angry. On January 3, 2023, Tasha met with her attorney to discuss her divorce from her abusive husband Michael. At the time, Michael was still living in the family home, but had recently moved into the basement, which provided Tasha with some relief. Her attorneys asked her if she ever felt concerned for her safety or that of her children because of Michael's erratic behavior. Despite Michael's occasional outbursts, Tasha told her attorneys that she never felt her safety or that of her children was threatened. In retrospect, it is clear that Tasha's optimism and misplaced trust in her husband were tragically misplaced. The investigation into the shooting of Michael Haight's family was a difficult and disturbing process for police as they reconstructed the events that led to the tragedy. A chilling discovery emerged from digital evidence collected from the family's computers and cell phones. On December 30th, just days before the shooting, Michael made a disturbing Google search at 10:41 p.m. He searched for information about guns and shootings, which, combined with other evidence, suggested a dark intent. Search queries included questions about how loud a 9mm gun is, how to recognize a gunshot, and what to do if you hear a gunshot in your neighborhood. In a letter, Michael wrote before he took his own life, he said he would rather rot in hell than endure what he described as his wife's controlling behavior. Michael expressed that he could not endure the situation for another day and was determined to end the manipulation and control he had endured. Michael's letter expressed deep frustration and despair. He had repeatedly asked for help, but no one seemed to listen. In this letter, Michael emphasized his determination not to become a burden to society. The details of the letter he left behind shocked and disbelieving many. Michael's actions were calculated and premeditated. He had planned the murder carefully, ensuring that his wife and children would not find out until it was too late. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Stacy Smith. Stacy Ann Smith was born on September 21, 1977. She was known for her beauty and outgoing personality, which made her a popular cheerleader in high school. After graduation, she met the love of her life, Stephen, and they started a family. Their daughter, Mackenzie, was born in June 2002, followed by a son, Landon, 4 years later. Stacy and Stephen eventually got married and thought their happiness would last. However, their relationship took a turn for the worse, and they eventually broke up. In 2009, she reconnected with an old high school acquaintance, Brent. Brent had secretly harbored feelings for Stacy back in high school, but she didn't reciprocate at the time. This time, their connection evolved into a romantic relationship. Stacy had divorced her ex-husband Steven by this point, and Brent was aware that she had moved on. As she started rebuilding her personal life, Stacy's friendship with Brent blossomed into something more, offering her a new lease on love. Stacy frequently saw Brent picked up the kids for the weekend. Brent got along well with Stacy's children, which made her happy. However, their relationship eventually hit a rough patch. They argued frequently, often due to Brent's jealousy, as he tried to exert control over certain aspects of her life. When Stacy was on the phone, Brent would demand to know who she was talking to. This led to them breaking up several times. On Christmas Eve 2009, Stacy moved into a new home with her children, her cousin Timothy, and Brent. They spent the evening decorating the house for Christmas and creating a warm atmosphere. A few days later, on December 28, 2009, Stacy's father, John Paul, tried to reach his daughter by phone, but she didn't answer. As several hours passed with no response or return call from Stacy, John grew concerned and decided to check on her. He drove to the house where Stacy lived with her children to see what was wrong. John arrived at the house and found nothing out of the ordinary at first. He knocked on the front door and called out to his daughter, Stacy, but there was no response. The door was locked, so he looked through the window and spotted his 3-year-old grandson, Landon. When Landon came closer, John asked where his mom was, and Landon said she was sleeping. However, John knew something was wrong because Stacy was a light sleeper and would have woken up to the knocks on the door. John asked Landon to let him in and guided him through opening the door. Once inside, John asked Landon to wait in the living room while he went to check on Stacy. Upon entering the kitchen, John found Stacy's body lying on the floor, and he realized she was dead. He discovered bloodstains in the kitchen and Stacy's bedroom. It was clear that Stacy's death was no accident. She had a fatal stab wound to her neck. The police were immediately called, and the house was searched. As detectives investigated the scene, they found a message scrawled on one of the walls that quickly grabbed their attention. Message at the crime scene accused Stacy of being unfaithful. The message consisted of only 2 words, cheating, and a second word that started with the letter W. The fact that Landon was left alone for most of the day while his mother was dead was particularly disturbing. Forensic analysis revealed the boy's bloody footprints next to Stacy's body. The police collected all potential evidence from the house, including cigarette butts and beer cans, which could be used to obtain DNA samples. However, the writing on the wall was of greatest interest to the investigators. Identifying the person who wrote it was crucial. Based on the evidence, it was reasonable to assume that the motive behind the crime was jealousy, cruelty, and a desire for revenge. The killer may have been someone Stacy knew and trusted, as there were no signs of forced entry into her home. This suggests that she may have let the perpetrator in voluntarily. The investigation found that Stacy's car and keys were missing, and her phone and the murder weapon were not found at the scene. The police alerted all patrol units to be on the lookout for Stacy's car, as the killer may have used it to flee the scene. Psychologists spoke with Landon, Stacy's son, to see if he had witnessed anything unusual or seen the person who hurt his mother. However, Landon was unable to provide any helpful information to the police. When he woke up, he found his mother lying on the floor and initially thought she was asleep. He tried to wake her up, but she was unresponsive. At the beginning of the investigation, 2 individuals identified as potential suspects, Stacy's boyfriend, Brent, and her ex-husband, Steven. It was possible that Steven still harbored feelings for Stacy and was resentful that she had moved on to someone else after their divorce. Brent, on the other hand, was known to be jealous, and this was common knowledge among those who knew him. While patrol officers searched for Stacy's car, investigators spoke with her family members. Following this conversation, Brent became the primary suspect. Brent's family and friends were aware of his intense jealousy and short temper, which often led to emotional outbursts when he suspected Stacy was in contact with someone else. His volatile nature was a major concern, and Stacy had even cut off communication with him several times in the past. Given his history, the detectives wanted to know if he had any involvement and establish his whereabouts at the time of Stacy's death. With a search warrant in hand, the investigators arrived at the house, finding Brent in his garage. The investigators informed Brent about the search warrant and explained that their visit was part of the investigation into Stacy Smith's death. Brent was stunned by the news of Stacy's death, but was his apparent grief just an act? Investigators took him to the police station for questioning to find out. During the interrogation, Brent's statements only fueled the police's suspicions. He revealed that his relationship with Stacy was troubled and they frequently argued. In fact, their last quarrel occurred the day before her death. Brent claimed that Stacy had an affair with one of his friends, a betrayal that had left their relationship reeling. Brent told the investigators that on December 27th, he went home after their fight, calmed down, and then returned to Stacy's house a few hours later. They had a quiet conversation in her bedroom, where intimacy was rekindled. He left around 2 a.m. Landon and her cousin Timothy were sleeping in the house and didn't notice anything unusual. Brent insisted that everything was fine between him and Stacy when he left, and he was unaware of her death until the police told him. However, no one could confirm Brent's alibi, leaving the investigators to doubt his story. The police requested that Brent take a polygraph test to gauge his responses to their questions. Initially hesitant, Brent agreed to the test in order to clear his name and avoid being perceived as a suspect. He successfully passed the polygraph test without any issues. Following the test, the police considered removing him from their list of suspects. During the polygraph test, officers observed a small red spot on Brent's shirt that resembled dried blood. Brent explained that he had sustained a minor injury the day before and claimed the spot was his own blood. To verify Brent's account, detectives decided to interview Stacy's cousin, Timothy, as he was the last person known to have seen Stacy alive. However, Timothy's whereabouts were unknown. Despite the family gathering after Stacy's death, Timothy had vanished, and his phone calls went unanswered. The family and police were worried, speculating that Timothy might have been kidnapped. Given his past struggles with substance abuse, it was possible that he owed money to someone who sought revenge. Stephen, Stacy's ex-husband, was an initial suspect in the crime. A possible motive was his anger towards Stacy for being in a relationship with Brent before their divorce was finalized. Although they no longer lived together, Stephen may have felt offended by Stacy's actions. This anger could have led him to commit the crime and leave a derogatory message at the scene. Another potential motive was Stephen's desire to have full custody of their children. As it stood, he only saw them on weekends. However, when questioned by police, Stephen remained calm and cooperative. He denied any involvement in Stacy's death, stating he would never harm Stacy. Stephen claimed that he and Stacy had maintained a cordial relationship after their divorce. He shared the same suspicions as Stacy's family, believing Brent was responsible for the crime. Stephen also mentioned that Stacy and Brent's relationship was unstable. He provided an alibi for the night of the crime, which was later confirmed by police, leading to his exclusion from the list of suspects. While searching for Stacy's car, investigators discovered a surprising twist. The vehicle they found belonged to Dr. William Casto, Stacy's boss. This revelation led to the discovery of a romantic relationship between Stacy and Dr. Casto. Colleagues reported that they were extremely close, and at one point, Dr. Casto had given Stacy a car. This new information made Dr. Casto a potential suspect in the investigation. The police considered the possibility that Dr. Casto might have found out about Stacy's relationship with Brent and reacted violently. To explore this lead, the detective began looking for Dr. Casto. However, Dr. Casto did not attempt to hide and continued with his daily routine. Upon learning of Stacy's death and the police's desire to speak with him, Dr. Casto voluntarily went to the police station. During the interrogation, Dr. Casto openly acknowledged his intimate relationship with Stacy and confirmed that he had given her the car. According to him, he and Stacy were in a long-term consensual relationship. He provided for her and was there to support her through problems. Despite their relationship, he vehemently denied any involvement in her murder, claiming he had no motive to harm her. He cooperated fully with the investigation, providing an alibi for the night of her death. The alibi checked out, and investigators were able to rule him out as a suspect. Through the use of GPS tracking technology, the location of Stacy's car was finally identified, in an abandoned parking lot roughly 5 miles from her residence. Authorities rushed to the scene, transported the car to their forensics garage for inspection. While police did find Stacy's credit cards and other belongings in the car, no physical evidence was recovered from the vehicle that suggested the presence of a weapon. Additionally, police investigating the disappearance made another discovery by digging deeper into Timothy's past. Timothy had a history of run-ins with the law and was hiding a dark past. He had previously been convicted of a sex crime and theft. The allegations stated that he had molested a minor, but Timothy claimed that that girl had lied about her age, leading him to believe she was of legal age. As a result of his conviction, Timothy served time in prison and was required to register as a sex offender. However, he failed to comply with this requirement. 2 days after Stacy's murder, Timothy contacted the police, claiming he was staying at a local motel and had no involvement in her death. A warrant was issued for Timothy's arrest. When police arrived at the motel, they found that Timothy had escaped, but they did find a woman he was in a relationship with. She informed the police that Timothy was hiding in an abandoned house on the other side of the city. On December 30th, 2009, Timothy was arrested and questioned by police about the events surrounding Stacy's death. When asked to corroborate Brent's alibi, Timothy confirmed that he had been at the house with Stacy and her son. However, Timothy then unexpectedly accused Brent of taking Stacy's life. According to Timothy, Brent was not a good person and was constantly fighting with Stacy. He even claimed to have witnessed an argument between them on the day of the incident. Timothy stated that he couldn't understand why Stacy was in a relationship with Brent, whom he believed did not love or respect her. When asked why he left the crime scene and hid, Timothy admitted that he was afraid of being arrested because he had not registered as a sex offender. However, Timothy's accusations against Brent lost credibility after the police received lab results showing that a drop of dried blood on Brent's shirt was actually his own, not Stacy's. With no evidence linking Brent to the crime, the focus of the investigation narrowed. Brent maintained that he had left the house, leaving only Stacy, Timothy, and Landon behind. 3-year-old Landon was clearly not capable of committing the crime and leaving a disturbing message on the wall. This led investigators to suspect that Timothy was hiding something. They noticed dried blood stains on Timothy's jeans and sent his clothes to the lab for further analysis. Timothy initially maintained that Brent was responsible for Stacy's death, but the investigators continued to question him. Eventually, he cracked under the pressure and revealed the truth. He explained that he had witnessed Stacy and Brent arguing on the night of her death, and Stacy had forgiven Brent as she always did. Timothy was angry with Stacy for forgiving Brent again. Later, after Brent had left, Timothy went to Stacy's bedroom to confront her. What transpired next is documented in court records without graphic details. On December 28, 2009, an argument broke out between Timothy and his cousin Stacy Smith at her home in St. Albans, West Virginia. The dispute began when Timothy made a comment about Stacy's boyfriend not treating her well. In response, Stacy called Timothy a junkie, which enraged him. He stormed out of the bedroom, went to the kitchen, and smoked a cigarette. A few minutes later, he returned to the bedroom, armed with a butcher knife. In a fatal attack, Timothy stabbed Stacy once in the right side of her neck as she lay in bed. Before fleeing the scene of the murder, Mr. Sutherland took Ms. Smith's cell phone, credit card, money, and car keys. He also wrote the words, "cheating," expletive, on a living room wall in the house. Timothy told investigators that after he injured Stacy, she was able to get out of bed and walk a few more steps. Her son was sleeping in another room, and her daughter was spending the night with friends. While Timothy was telling all this to the detectives, he was crying, and it seemed he was sincerely remorseful. He also told them where he had put the weapon of the crime. He threw the knife that he used to take Stacy's life out the car window, not far from Stacy's house. Later, the police found this knife in the place Timothy specified. Laboratory analysis showed that there was Stacy's blood on his jeans. All this was enough to bring charges. When asked why he wrote these words on the wall, he replied that he wanted Stacy's boyfriend to become a suspect in the crime. Everyone knew Stacy and Brent often quarreled, and he wanted everyone to think that Brent had taken her life out of jealousy. But Brent believed that wasn't the only reason. Brent thought Timothy was in love with his cousin and was jealous of her. That night, he sat in an armchair in the living room and heard everything Brent and Stacy were doing in the bedroom. Perhaps jealousy made him lose his temper and do something. No one can fix this. The police considered the possibility that Timothy could have unsuccessfully tried to persuade Stacy into intimacy after Brent left the house. Yet, they found no evidence to confirm this. Only 2 people knew what happened that night, and one of them was dead. Although Timothy Sutherland fully admitted his guilt during interrogation, he declared his innocence at the first court hearing in 2010. But the authorities had enough evidence to convict him. The only question was who the jury would believe, the prosecutor, who claimed that the crime was premeditated, or the lawyer, who said that his client committed the crime in a state of passion. However, the fact that Timothy left her bedroom after an argument with Stacy, went to the kitchen, smoked a cigarette there, and then took a knife and returned indicated that he was aware of what he was doing. On March 18, 2011, Timothy Ray Sutherland was found guilty. The court sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In 2013, he attempted to appeal the verdict but failed. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Daniel Wozniak. Sam Herr was born to parents Stephen and Raquel Kalberman on May 29, 1983, in Los Angeles, California. As their only child, Sam Herr was showered with love and attention from his parents, his father being a special education teacher and his mother a stay-at-home parent. Sam Herr maintained a close relationship with his parents even after he moved away. Despite his physically imposing stature, Sam Herr's friends affectionately referred to him as a gentle giant, describing him as a fun-loving and laid-back individual. Sam Herr enlisted in the United States Army at a young age and completed tours of duty in Afghanistan and Germany as part of the 173rd Airborne. After serving for 3 years, he was honorably discharged and returned to Southern California to pursue higher education using the GI Bill. His goal was to complete college and then re-enlist in the Army as an officer. To achieve this, Sam enrolled in Orange Coast Community College, where he befriended Julie Kibushi, who was 3 years his junior. However, Sam Herr struggled with the emotional aftermath of his military service, ultimately developing post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, a common affliction among veterans. When 28-year-old Sam Herr failed to visit his parents' house over a weekend as planned, they began to worry. Sam Hare's parents, Stephen and Raquel, became increasingly concerned after several attempts to contact their son went unanswered. Deciding to take matters into their own hands, Stephen went to Sam Hare's apartment in Costa Mesa with his wife to see what was amiss. Their discovery led to immediate panic when they could not find their son and only saw Julie Kibushi in a state of horror. Stephen quickly dialed 911 as Raquel choked and screamed. The moment they realized Julie had met a gruesome end, they knew their lives would never be the same, and the trauma would have a lasting impact. The Costa Mesa community was shocked by the incident, as murders are rare there. At the apartment, police found no signs of a disturbance. The bedroom, however, presented a disturbing scene. On the bedside table, investigators found an unused knife, as well as 2 books, a combat manual and a sex guide. But it was the condition of the bed that was truly horrifying. The bed was soaked in the Julie Kibushi's blood, and the deceased Julie Kibushi was found in a compromising position, partially lying on the bed and partially kneeling on the floor. Her pants had been pulled down, exposing her lower body, leading detectives to suspect that she may have been sexually assaulted before her murder. The autopsy revealed that she had suffered 2 gunshot wounds to the head, with 1 bullet entering the top center of her skull. Although a knife was found on the bedside table, it appeared to have been unused. Other unusual details included a tiara on the victim's head and the words, "All yours," scrawled on the back of Julie Kibushi sweater. Julie Kibushi handbag was found in the kitchen. The detectives identified the victim as 23-year-old Julie Kibushi, who was born on Valentine's Day in 1987 to a Japanese-American family. She was the first daughter and third of 4 children to parents June and Masa Kibushi. Her parents affectionately called her "my Valentine girl" from a young age. Julie Kibushi developed a passion for tap dancing at the age of 5, which continued to grow throughout her life. Those who knew her described her as a joyful person to be around, with a goofy and bubbly personality that could light up a room. Julie Kibushi was known for her kindness and willingness to go out of her way to help others. Julie Kibushi's life was a balance between her Japanese heritage and her independent American spirit. She had recently graduated from the Orange County School of the Arts and was pursuing a degree in fashion design at Orange Coast Community College. There, she befriended 26-year-old Sam Hare and even tutored him in anthropology. Little did she know, her kindness would ultimately lead to her tragic demise. The police investigation into Julie Kibushi's murder was underway. Detectives meticulously examined the crime scene, searching for clues that would reveal the truth about her final moments. Their attention turned to Sam Hare, as Julie Kibushi's body was found in his apartment. His sudden disappearance further raised suspicions. With evidence pointing to Sam Hare's involvement, investigators decided to take a closer look at him. Detectives suspected that Sam Hare had committed the crime in a moment of passion and then fled. This theory was supported by the fact that Sam Hare was nowhere to be found after the murder of Julie Kibushi in his apartment. The discovery of text messages from Sam Hare's number on Julie Kibushi's phone further fueled their suspicions. Initially, the messages seemed innocuous, with Sam Hare sending Julie Kibushi a text at 2:45 p.m. on May 21, 2010, telling her he would help a friend and then visit his parents. However, just 2 hours later, his messages took a drastic turn, as he frantically asked Julie Kibushi to come to his apartment. However, investigators interpreted these messages as evidence of Sam Hare's guilt, arguing that he had planned for Julie Kibushi to visit his apartment, which ultimately led to the murder. The disappearance of several key items from the apartment hinted at Sam Hare's possible flight. His passport and car were both missing, leading investigators to a straightforward conclusion: Sam Hare was on the run, and likely the prime suspect in the crime. As the investigation continued, the Costa Mesa police tracked Sam Hare's cell phone and credit card activity to pinpoint his location. They discovered that his credit card had been used for 4 ATM withdrawals in a purchase at a pizza delivery place in Long Beach, California, just 20 miles from Sam's home. Police anticipated that Sam would appear in the surveillance footage of the ATM. However, when the bank provided the footage, the police were shocked to see a teenager wearing a hoodie, not Sam withdrawing money from his account. Neither the police nor Sam Hare's parents could identify the mysterious boy. Investigators believed he was probably helping Sam escape or hide. In either case, the Costa Mesa police were determined to find him. On May 26, 2010, they discovered that his credit card had been used for another pizza delivery, and they began tracing the delivery driver. Police went to an address provided by a tipster, expecting to catch Sam but instead found 17-year-old Wesley Freilich and his friends. Although initially suspected, authorities quickly cleared Wesley's name. However, they discovered that he possessed Sam Hare's credit card. Wesley told investigators a surprising story. He had been given the credit card by Daniel Wozniak, a local theater actor who had met Wesley through community theater. Daniel Wozniak claimed to be a bail bondsman and said he needed help collecting money from Sam. Believing Wozniak's story, Wesley agreed to withdraw cash using the credit card, unaware of the true circumstances. A total of $1,900 was withdrawn from the account, sparking further investigation. The name Daniel Wozniak was familiar to investigators, who had previously found an invitation to his upcoming wedding in Sam Hare's apartment. This raised several questions. Who was Daniel Wozniak, and what was his connection to Sam? Was he involved in helping Sam escape, or was he a more sinister accomplice to the murder? These questions needed to be answered. To understand Daniel Wozniak's potential role, investigators looked into his background. Born on March 23, 1984, Daniel Wozniak was the youngest of 3 brothers. Due to his parents' demanding work schedules, he spent a significant amount of time with his grandparents after school. Daniel Wozniak grew up in a privileged household and was accustomed to luxury. Daniel Wozniak's journey to becoming an actor began in his early 20s. Despite struggling to hold down a job and often having to move to low-paying positions, his passion for acting and singing in musicals kept him going. It was during this time that he met his future wife, a fellow actress, and they eventually got married. However, their happiness was short-lived. On May 26, 2010, the day of Daniel Wozniak's bachelor party in Huntington Beach, California, police arrived with an arrest warrant. This unexpected turn of events linked Daniel Wozniak to the murder of Julie Kibushi, as it turned out that Sam the suspected killer, lived in the same apartment complex as Daniel Wozniak. Authorities believed that Daniel Wozniak may have helped Sam escape or hide, leading them to assume he was involved in the crime. Police arrested and questioned Daniel Wozniak. Initially, during interrogation, Daniel Wozniak claimed that his only wrongdoing was credit card fraud and that he had covered for his friend Sam. He explained to investigators that he, Sam, and Wesley had planned to withdraw all of his money from the bank and then report the credit cards as stolen. Daniel Wozniak claims he dropped Sam off at a local mall. Detectives remained skeptical, however, believing that Daniel Wozniak was still protecting Sam and had more to do with Julie Kibushi's murder than he had let on. In an effort to uncover the truth, police asked Wozniak to provide a DNA sample, a request that made him nervous. Detectives noticed Daniel Wozniak's nervous behavior when questioned about his DNA being found at Sam Hare's apartment, despite his attempts to act nonchalant. As the pressure mounted, he began to alter his story repeatedly. Eventually, Daniel Wozniak cracked and admitted he knew about Julie Kibushi's murder and had helped the perpetrator escape. However, when reminded that his DNA had been collected, he insisted it would not match any evidence found on Julie Kibushi's body, clinging to the claim of his innocence. Just as detectives were expecting Daniel Wozniak to reveal more information, he abruptly ended the interview. The detectives, determined to uncover the truth, informed Daniel Wozniak that he would be arrested as an accessory to murder if he didn't provide a full account of his involvement. Daniel Wozniak, who was scheduled to get married in just 48 hours, was caught between revealing the truth and avoiding arrest, which would ruin his wedding plans. Under intense questioning, Daniel Wozniak's story began to unravel. Detectives sensed his weakness and accelerated the process by falsely claiming that DNA evidence linked him to Julie Kibushi's body. They misled him, as DNA test results would not be available for weeks. Instead of disputing the claim, Daniel Wozniak surprisingly explained that his DNA would be on Julie Kibushi's body because he was near her. This inconsistent response raised suspicions. As Daniel Wozniak's lies continued to crumble, he made a stunning revelation, which was particularly alarming to detectives because they had initially observed only one gunshot wound at the crime scene. It wasn't until the autopsy was performed that a second gunshot wound was discovered, casting further doubt on Daniel Wozniak's credibility. Daniel Wozniak's confession implicated him as an accomplice to the murder, allowing investigators to formally detain him. However, detectives still needed to locate Sam Herr, and Daniel Wozniak refused to cooperate. Despite being in custody, Daniel Wozniak made a phone call to his fiancée, Rachel Buffett. Unbeknownst to Daniel Wozniak, the conversation was being recorded, which would eventually ensnare him in his own deceit. Rachel decided to prioritize her freedom over her relationship and informed Daniel Wozniak that she would share more information with the detectives. Realizing he needed to act swiftly, Daniel Wozniak became frantic and sought to negotiate a deal with the detectives, a reversal of his stance just hours earlier. Daniel Wozniak revealed a shocking account to the detectives, detailing his sinister murder plan. It began with a seemingly innocuous request to a friend, Sam Herr, whom he considered trustworthy. On May 21, 2010, Daniel Wozniak asked Sam Herr to help him move boxes at the Los Alamitos Theater attic, located on a local military base. Sam Herr was initially unaware of what had happened. When he realized he had been shot, he begged Daniel Wozniak for help. However, Daniel Wozniak showed no mercy. Without hesitation, he reloaded the gun and shot Sam Herr a second time, killing him instantly. The suspect brutally murdered Sam Herr and didn't stop there. He then used Sam Herr's phone to text Julie Kibushi, luring her to Sam Herr's apartment. He left Sam Herr's body in the attic later that night. The suspect snuck into Sam Herr's apartment, where Julie Kibushi had fallen into his trap. He then shot Julie Kibushi twice in the head. Daniel Wozniak altered the crime scene to make people think Sam Herr was the culprit, and he fled after attacking and killing Julie Kibushi. However, Daniel Wozniak realized that he still had to hide Sam Herr's body. Daniel Wozniak went back to the attic and cut off Sam Herr's hands and head to make it harder to identify the body. He then got rid of these body parts in a nearby park. Despite his gruesome actions, Daniel Wozniak appeared to be unaffected and returned to the theater, where he was seen laughing and joking with others in several photos taken at cast parties, which were later found by detectives. The underlying motive for the murders was surprisingly straightforward: money. Daniel Wozniak's financial struggles were well documented, with 2 months of unpaid rent threatening his eviction and no means to fund the lavish wedding and honeymoon he had planned. However, his situation changed dramatically when he discovered that Sam Herr had $62,000 in savings from his military service. This revelation sparked a sinister plan, and Daniel Wozniak brutally murdered 2 innocent people in cold blood, all to fund his own extravagant celebrations. The bag containing crucial evidence against Daniel Wozniak was meant to be disposed of by his brother Tim, but Tim threw it over their parents' fence instead. The bag held incriminating items like bloody clothing, a weapon, and victim Sam Herr's records and passport, all with Daniel's DNA. This treasure trove of evidence helped secure a quick conviction, with Daniel found guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder on December 16, 2015. On January 11, 2016, the jury in Daniel Wozniak's trial recommended the death penalty after only 1 hour of deliberation, a remarkably short time for such a serious decision. The judge later sentenced Daniel Wozniak to death on September 23, 2016. Years after the trial, detectives discovered that Rachel Buffett, Daniel Wozniak's former fiancée, had been aware of the murder plots and had misled investigators. Despite her denials, Rachel Buffett was arrested and charged with 3 felony counts of accessory after the fact for allegedly lying to the police on multiple occasions. On September 12, 2018, Rachel Buffett was found guilty of 2 serious charges, which carried a maximum sentence of 44 months in prison. As a result, she received a 32-month prison sentence on November 8, 2018. She was eventually released in 2019. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Irene Cortez. Irene Cortez was born in 1980 in Granada, Spain. She is the eldest of a well-off family with a younger brother and sister. Her parents ran a small business, but her father died early. Her mother, Maria Lucas, took over and expanded the business, ensuring that her children did not lack anything. Irene was a beautiful, sociable girl who loved to be the center of attention. She married and became pregnant at the age of 17, then had a second child 2 years later. With the support of her mother and uncle, she continued to pursue education. In the early 2000s, Irene with her husband and 2 children moved to the resort city of Malaga and opened a disco bar. The bar became popular. The bar later transformed into a full-fledged nightclub and brought her profits. The couple welcomed their 3rd child and life seemed prosperous and stable. However, at the age of 25, Irene's husband was arrested and sentenced to 5 years in prison for trafficking illegal narcotics. He later died in prison under mysterious circumstances. Irene was left to raise her children on her own. She remembered how her mother had raised 3 children on her own and was determined to persevere. Irene successfully ran her own business, made a lot of money and had big plans for the future. In Malaga, Irene was immediately impressed by the hardworking and reliable man named Ferd. She was also attracted to him and Ferd always tried to please her. At the time, Irene's husband was in prison and she planned to file for divorce, but he died before she could do so. Irene and Ferd's relationship gradually blossomed into love. Ferd Saras, born in Baronia, Colombia, grew up in a large and poor family. When he was young, his parents separated in the early 90s. His siblings became independent and he lived with his mother. In 2001, Ferd and his elderly mother moved to Spain in search of a better life. They settled in Malaga, where Ferd took any job he could find to support himself and his mother. Despite Ferd's humble background and Irene's 3 children from previous relationships, Ferd and Irene decided to move in together. They settled in Irene's spacious apartment and soon after, Irene became pregnant with their first child. Their marriage produced a total of 3 children. However, it is unclear whether they were officially married. Irene kept her first husband's surname, while the children born to Ferd were given the surname Saras. In 2009, Irene's life took a negative turn. Ferd was arrested for drug trafficking and sentenced to prison, just like her first husband. Irene was left to care for her 5 children alone. Although Ferd's sentence was 3 years, he was pardoned after serving only a year and a half for his good behavior and cooperation during the investigation. While Ferd was in prison, Irene began a relationship with another man and lived with him. However, when Ferd was released and discovered Irene's infidelity, he became furious. He threatened Irene and her new boyfriend, even intending to injure the man. Fortunately, the situation was resolved without becoming a serious problem. Later, Ferd decided to forgive Irene for the sake of their children's happiness, and they decided to continue living together. However, Irene's relatives were still suspicious of Ferd's intentions. Irene's mother and uncle believed that Ferd was only interested in Irene's wealth and did not support their relationship. Irene's older children from a previous marriage could not accept Ferd, but the youngest child, who had been raised by Ferd since he was 2 years old, considered him a real father. In early 2011, Ferd wanted to return to Colombia to visit his homeland because his father was seriously ill. Ferd's father had been diagnosed with terminal cancer, and his sister had informed him of his health condition. Irene also wanted to visit Colombia and decided to go with her husband. She wanted to meet Ferd's father for the first time and experienced the famous Baronia Festival, an event that usually takes place at the end of February. For Irene, the trip was also a much-needed break after years of hard work and raising 5 children without a break. Irene and Ferd had planned a 10-day trip, and her mother and sister had agreed to take care of the children during their absence. Although Irene's mother had concerns about the trip, she did not take them seriously. However, at the time, Irene's family was in financial trouble due to an unfortunate business. The situation became worse when Irene discovered that the €3,000 in personal savings she had kept at home had disappeared the night before they left. This almost caused their plans to be cancelled. But Irene quickly found a solution and borrowed money from her uncle and some close friends. She then booked plane tickets in a hotel in the city center, ensuring that they were ready for the trip. Irene and Ferd arrived in Colombia on February 27, 2011. Upon arrival, they checked into a hotel and Irene called home to inform her mother that the flight had gone smoothly. 2 days later, Ferd broke the bad news of Irene's death to her 14-year-old eldest son, initially claiming it was an accident. However, the truth was soon revealed. Irene had been murdered during a robbery at an entertainment venue in Baronia. The case attracted widespread media attention in Colombia. Initially, the story revolved around Irene, a Spanish tourist who was murdered by robbers and fled the scene, leading to a massive police manhunt across the city. But the circumstances of the robbery and murder were unusual. The attackers did not appear to have been interested in stealing valuables, instead shooting Irene in the heart before fleeing the scene. Upon arriving at the scene, Ferd's calm demeanor during interviews with police and media representatives raised suspicions. Authorities confirmed Irene's murder and said that her remains would be repatriated once the investigation was complete. As investigators reviewed surveillance footage from the scene, the mystery of Irene Cortez's death began to unravel. The footage was important because it captured Irene and Ferd Garris meeting Ferd's brother, sister, and wife on March 1st. That evening, the group spent time attending a festival, walking around town, and then going to a local bar for dinner at Ferd's suggestion. As the time passed 1 a.m. and the bar emptied, Irene's group were the only customers left, along with the bar staff. However, things took a turn for the worse around 2 a.m. when 2 men who seemed uncomfortable walked into the restaurant. What worried the manager was that the 2 men did not order any food or drinks, and their behavior was very suspicious. Furthermore, their youthful appearance prompted the manager to check whether they were of legal age. The young men refused to show identification when asked to leave. One of them pulled out a gun and pointed it at the manager. His accomplice pulled out a knife but quickly moved out of view of the camera. The gunman pushed the manager aside, approached Irene's table and announced his intention to rob her, demanding her cell phone and cash. The accomplice with the knife reappeared, presumably to collect valuables, while the gunman threatened the group. The gunman ordered Ferd to stand up so he could search her pockets. As Irene attempted to grab her purse, the attacker shoved her with his gun. A shot was fired as he grabbed the purse, hitting Irene in the chest. She fell to the floor, and the attackers fled without taking anything. Faced with a dangerous situation, Ferd and his brother chased the attackers while his sister tried to treat Irene's wounds. At that time, the brother's wife called for help, but the attackers escaped too quickly to catch up. The emergency services arrived quickly, but Irene died of her injuries on the way to the hospital. After the robbery and murder at the bar, which left Irene dead, law enforcement agencies mobilized all possible resources. Since the city was in the midst of a crowded holiday season, ensuring their safety was of utmost importance. A large reward was announced, 10 million pesos, equivalent to 3,500 euros, for information leading to the perpetrator. Shortly after, a suspect named Brian Dario was arrested. He later gave the name of his accomplice, Juan Carlos. Juan Carlos, 18, voluntarily surrendered in the hope of a lighter sentence. During Brian's interrogation, he claimed that his financial situation, debts, and the need to care for his sick child with high medical costs led him to commit the crime. These statements were later confirmed by his relatives. Brian also claimed that the shooting of Irene was an accident while he was trying to snatch her handbag. Juan Carlos also claimed that he was involved in the crime unintentionally. He said that Brian did not reveal his detailed plan but asked for help in his work. One claimed that he only carried a small knife to threaten, not to cause injury, and left the scene when he realized Brian's true intentions. However, surveillance camera footage contradicts Juan's statement, showing that he returned to Brian. With both suspects arrested and confessing to the crime, the case seemed to be solved and prison sentences awaited them. The court found Brian guilty of robbery and murder, with aggravating circumstances, and sentenced him to 23 years in prison. Meanwhile, Juan received a 17-year sentence for his role as Brian's accomplice. From the beginning of the investigation, Irene's family accused Ferd of orchestrating the murder of his wife. Irene's mother and uncle hired a private investigator to conduct an independent investigation, gathering additional evidence and files to hold Ferd responsible and prove his involvement in the case. According to Maria Lucas, Ferd was the only person who knew about the 3,000 euros hidden in Irene's house, and he was also the only one who could have secretly accessed the money. Another important detail is that Ferd used his father's illness as the main reason to go to Colombia. However, in reality, Ferd's father was not diagnosed with cancer and he is still healthy for his age. Juan was clearly scared and likely didn't understand what was happening as Brian approached and went up to Ferd and lifted him without directly threatening him with a gun. It seemed like the men knew each other and were acting together. Then, Ferd oddly moved behind Irene, who was sitting at the table, when she reached into her bag for her wallet. The man with the gun looked at another man as if waiting for a signal. It's unclear if he received any sign, as Irene and Ferd had their backs to the camera. After the shot, Ferd chased the killer but, according to experts, he deliberately let him escape. However, this claim is controversial because Brian was armed, and Ferd might have feared for his life. Ferd's behavior after Irene was declared dead was also questionable. He willingly gave interviews to reporters, discussed the details of the incident, and didn't appear too upset or depressed. Another important question is why, after the tragedy, Ferd called Irene's 14-year-old son instead of her mother, uncle, or any adult relatives to inform him of her death. Pedro Lucas, Irene's uncle, broke the silence by giving a press interview in which he openly expressed his suspicions and investigation findings. He firmly believed that Ferd had meticulously planned the trip to trap Irene. According to Pedro, Ferd used the stolen money to hire a killer and had plans to acquire guardianship of the children and take control of the business after Irene's death. Ferd's mother vehemently defended her son against the accusations. She claimed that Ferd truly loved Irene and the children and would never harm them. However, while defending Ferd, she inadvertently revealed that he had a tendency to take offense when his pride was hurt, particularly when it came to Irene's loyalty. Furthermore, a disturbing revelation emerged that Ferd had left Spain using forged documents, as he was not permitted to travel due to his recent parole release from prison. In response, Ferd denied the claim, stating that he departed the country legally, with Irene acting as his guarantor. Irene's body was finally returned to her native Spain 12 days after the tragedy. Due to the advanced state of decomposition, the coffin had to remain closed throughout the ceremony. Hundreds of mourners attended, including family, friends, neighbors, and even strangers who were moved by Irene's story. However, one person who was absent was none other than Ferd. Ferd chose not to return to Spain for the funeral, fearing retaliation from Irene's relatives. He claimed that they had repeatedly threatened him and his elderly mother, and so he decided to delay his return. Before attempting to return, Ferd sought a protection order from the authorities, but his request was denied. Feeling unprotected, he decided not to risk attending the funeral. Instead, Ferd took his concerns to court, filing a complaint against Irene's relatives, Maria and Pedro Lucas, alleging that they were preventing him from returning home. However, the couple denied Ferd's complaint, claiming that they actually wanted him to return to Spain to stand trial. Further investigations and trials were conducted with new details and charges against Ferd. Brian and Juan, who were serving time in a Colombian prison, were questioned about their relationship with Ferd and the possibility of a premeditated plot. However, Brian completely denied this theory. He maintained that the murder was simply the unintended consequence of a robbery gone wrong. Brian claimed that he had never met Ferd before and denied being hired as a hitman to kill Irene. The allegations seemed to lack any basis, with no clear evidence of premeditation or contract killing. There were only assumptions and interpretations of events from the recording. Brian admitted that he had consumed alcohol and drugs that night, so he did not remember the events clearly. Juan insisted that his friend had nothing to do with Ferd's plan and that everyone was shocked by what happened in the bar. Juan appears to be telling the truth, but the testimony of Brian, who fired the fatal shot, raises doubts. Although he did not commit the robbery, Brian's sick child is receiving expensive treatment in hospital. Brian claims that someone kind helped, but the lawyer claims that the €3,000 stolen from Irene were used for treatment. There are rumors that Brian accepted prison to save his child and secretly transferred the money to his wife, but this has not been proven. Ferd only returned to Spain after a court order to ensure his safety. Months passed and media attention waned. When he returned, Ferd claimed to have evidence proving his innocence in the murder of his wife. The main reason for his return was to take care of the children he had with Irene, who had been cared for by Irene's relatives during his absence. 6 months later, Ferd revealed in a major interview that his life had changed completely. He lost his job, had his passport confiscated, and was unable to leave the country. Worse still, his friends turned their backs on him. His late wife's mother and uncle prevented Ferd from seeing his children. Ferd repeatedly confronted Maria and Pedro Lucas in court. He accused them of threatening him, while they tried to prove that Ferd was involved in Irene's death. However, neither side could provide convincing evidence. As a result, Ferd's children remained in the care of his grandmother and uncle. Ferd was also unable to reclaim any of his late wife's assets. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Karina Vetrano. On August 2nd, 2016, Karina planned to meet her father after work to spend some quality time together. Since Miss Vetrano had moved away, family gatherings had become infrequent due to everyone's busy schedules. Karina in particular had a lot on her plate, juggling 2 jobs. Philip picked up Karina from work and took her to his home, where they shared stories about their week. Before leaving, Karina invited her father to join her for a jog, as they often did, covering several miles together. However, Philip declined, citing severe back pain that couldn't be alleviated. He offered to call her a cab instead, but Karina preferred to jog, enjoying the pleasant weather and fresh air. Moreover, she was training for an upcoming marathon to take her mind off her recent breakup. A jog was just what she needed to clear her head. That evening, the Vetrano family said goodbye to their youngest daughter, Karina. As she left for a jog at 5:45 p.m., her usual route took her to Spring Creek Park, a peaceful oasis in the midst of the city. However, her father, Mr. Vetrano, warned her to stick to familiar paths and avoid talking to strangers, as parts of the park were overgrown with thickets and swamps. Ignoring her father's advice, Karina wandered into a secluded, grassy area in search of solitude. Tragically, her decision proved fatal. A sudden, sharp pain struck the back of her head, and she fell to the ground. As the hours ticked by, the Vetrano family grew increasingly anxious. It had been 2 hours since Karina left, and she should have been home by now, or at least answering her parents' frantic calls. But there was only silence, and a chilling uncertainty settled over the Vetrano household. Philip's anxiety grew as he sensed something was wrong, so he sought help from his neighbor, the chief of the New York City Police Department. The two were on good terms, and the chief knew Philip wouldn't worry unnecessarily. After reporting Karina missing, the police launched a search in the park area and surrounding streets, using experienced canine units. The first 24 hours are critical in missing person cases, so they utilized all available resources before nightfall. Meanwhile, Mr. Vetrano, accompanied by a group of volunteers, searched for his daughter on his own. He thoroughly combed the park, making phone calls along the way. As dusk fell, he spotted a light in the grass and upon closer inspection, found Karina's phone. Philip hoped that maybe she had simply lost her phone and hadn't notified them. Philip, her father, pushed through underbrush towards police officers but stumbled upon a lifeless young woman, partially undressed and face down. As he turned her over, his heart sank. It was his daughter Karina. A scream erupted from his lips as the truth hit him. His darkest fears realized. The news was too much for Mr. Vetrano to bear. The police, responding to his anguished screams and cries, rushed over to restrain him, carefully pulling him away from Karina's lifeless body. They explained that the area was now a crime scene, and every detail, no matter how small, was crucial evidence. To preserve the integrity of the investigation, the officers gently but firmly asked Philip not to touch or disturb anything in the surrounding area. On his way home, Mr. Vetrano was consumed by thoughts of how to break the devastating news to his wife about their daughter's passing. Memories of the past flooded his mind, including the day their second daughter was born on July 12, 1986, in Queens. He felt immense pride in her from a young age, recalling how obedient and well-mannered she was. He vividly recalled taking her to her first day of school and her academic achievements, which led to her earning a master's degree in speech pathology from St. John's University. Karina had always dreamed of helping children, particularly those with autism. She was a multi-talented individual who loved to travel, write, and engage in sports, especially running, which was a shared passion between them, bringing them closer together. As a father, he had been protective of her relationships, wanting her to be truly loved and hoping she would build a strong family like his own, eventually giving him loving grandchildren. As Mr. Vetrano returned home, the journey felt like an eternity. He paused at the entrance, taking a deep breath to calm himself. "I need to be strong for my family," he thought. "I have to pull myself together." His wife met him at the door and immediately understood the gravity of the situation from the look on his face. Kathy cried and embraced her husband, offering comfort. As the news spread, relatives and friends struggled to come to terms with what had happened. They were shocked and disbelieving, finding it hard to accept the brutal and sudden death of her. The investigation revealed that Miss Vetrano had been the victim of a brutal attack. It was clear that she had fought back. Her clenched fists and the bruises and abrasions on her body were evidence of her resistance. Her athletic clothing was torn, and the autopsy showed that the back of her skull had been damaged by a blunt object, likely a stone. However, the cause of death was ultimately asphyxiation, with a clear mark visible on her neck. The forensic examination provided disturbing evidence that Karina Vetrano's death was a violent and intimate crime. The experts' findings supported the police's initial suspicions. Traces of earth and grass were found under the victim's fingernails, suggesting that she tried to free herself from her attacker's grip. Further examination revealed that her teeth were knocked out and cracked, indicating that she bit her attacker in self-defense. The multiple scratches on her neck indicated that she used her hands to try to pry the attacker's grip loose. Karina's determination to survive is evident in her fierce struggle. In life, Karina was a creative and thoughtful person who enjoyed writing. She had starred in a short film based on her poem Paradox in 2013 and often wrote about complex topics such as love and mortality in her blog posts. Tragically, shortly after her death, another jogger's body was found in a similar location in Princeton, Massachusetts. A woman walking alone in a secluded area suffered a similar attack. At first, it seemed like the same perpetrator as in previous cases, but geneticists compared DNA samples from the crime scenes and found no connection between the crimes. Surprisingly, the DNA samples didn't match, indicating they came from different individuals. Of particular interest was the DNA found under the victim's fingernails, on her back, and on Karina Vetrano's phone. Although the DNA was present in small amounts, experts were able to analyze it, and for a long time, it remained the only lead in the investigation, offering hope of identifying the attacker. Due to the fact that most murders are committed by someone the victim knows, the police had to consider every possibility. To aid in the investigation, the victim's father, who was the first to find his daughter's body, provided a DNA sample. Unfortunately, this procedure was conducted on the day of Karina's funeral, which was a poorly chosen time. Later, all of Karina's relatives also underwent DNA testing, but none of the results matched anything. Detectives questioned Karina's family and friends to see if anyone had a grudge against Mrs. Vetrano, but they found no one who might want to harm her. Everyone they spoke to respected and loved her. Next, they considered the possibility that the crime was committed for selfish reasons, such as meeting Karina in a secluded spot and attacking her. Unable to make progress, the investigators turned to the public for help, offering a $10,000 reward for information that could identify the perpetrator. The public responded, and detectives pursued over 250 leads, conducted 600 DNA tests, and compiled more than 1,700 reports. However, all their efforts were in vain, and it seemed that the perpetrator might not have a prior criminal record, which made the investigation even more challenging. Then on August 31, 2016, a utility worker came forward with information, saying he had been in a restricted area of the park when Karina died, and had seen a man emerging from the bushes, who then ran north. The New York Police Department created and distributed a sketch of the suspect based on a witness's testimony. However, by December 2016, they began to consider the possibility that the person in the sketch might have been an innocent bystander who was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. Unfortunately, the release of the sketch did not generate any new leads, and the investigation stalled once again. On December 4, 2016, the FBI joined the investigation into Karina Vetrano's death. They created a psychological profile of the perpetrator, suggesting that the individual was very familiar with the area, particularly the park where the incident occurred. This led them to believe that the attacker might have lived or still lives nearby. However, the FBI thought that the perpetrator was now avoiding the area, fearing capture. The police realized that the perpetrator had chosen the quiet, overgrown area of the park to commit the crime because it was easy to conceal his actions. Following this theory, the police screened local African-American men, but this did not produce the desired result. Chanel Lewis, a young African-American man who lived in a low-income housing complex in Brooklyn, about 4 or 5 miles from Spring Creek Park, did not stand out as a suspect at the time. Chanel lived with his mother, 3 sisters, and their children. He had been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, but this didn't hold him back from graduating from a special school for students with emotional and behavioral issues. In school, Chanel was a quiet loner who was often bullied by his classmates. They would tease him about his clothes and appearance, and some girls even intimidated and punched him. Although he would sometimes try to fight back, he was no match for his tormentors. Instead, he would often smirk and walk away, earning him the nickname African Lizard. Despite this, a classmate named Danielle remembered Chanel as a smart kid with good grades who liked to share funny videos on the bus. She never saw him be mean to anyone. There were some reports that Chanel had once talked about wanting to bring a knife to school when he was in middle school. However, the head of his school, later transferred, Dr. Edward Dana, said that they had no record of such threats. During Chanel's time at his school, he never got in trouble and never made any threats towards his fellow students. Chanel Lewis had a tough time as a teenager, often facing bullying and experiencing trauma. Despite this, he dreamed of working in social services to help people in need. When conflicts arose at home, he would take long walks, frequently visiting a local park. Lewis had a few minor run-ins with the police, including 2 incidents in Spring Creek and another for public urination in May 2016. In another incident, a store owner accused Lewis of loitering in his shop with a crowbar. When the police responded, they checked Lewis's ID and let him go, since he didn't have a prior record. Although this incident seemed minor at the time, it would later become crucial in the investigation into Karina Vetrano's death, which occurred in February 2017. Detective John Russo remembered a crucial detail from the investigation: a suspicious young man in a hoodie who would often lurk in the park, walking slowly and stopping in front of houses as if scouting for potential burglary targets. Although Russo lost sight of him, he didn't forget the encounter. The next day, a store owner reported an incident, and a teenager matching the description came to the police's attention. 2 months into the investigation, Russo revisited the memory of the suspicious individual, wondering if he might have witnessed something crucial, leading investigators to focus on Chanel Lewis. As they dug deeper into Lewis's background, his peculiar behavior, and a disturbing claim that he had expressed a desire to harm girls raised serious concerns and suspicions. With no other leads, the police decided to concentrate their efforts on Lewis. After Karina's death, it was discovered that Chanel Lewis had left his family's home after an argument and went to the park. When he returned, he was disheveled and had torn clothes, bruises, and abrasions. His mother asked what had happened, and Chanel claimed he was attacked. A witness's description of a man fleeing the park matched his account, which fit with the timeline of events. When investigators reviewed the medical records, they found Chanel's story plausible. However, they noticed similarities between Chanel's events and Karina Vetrano's case, raising suspicions. On February 4, 2017, Chanel voluntarily provided his DNA at the police station, which seemed unusual for someone who might be guilty. The interrogation of Lewis began the next day. He acknowledged being in the park on August 2, 2016, around 5 p.m., but specified that he was walking on dirt paths and listening to music. He admitted encountering Karina jogging with her phone. When detectives asked if something happened during their encounter, Lewis nodded and softly replied, "Yes." The response was cryptic, suggesting confusion. The investigators grew frustrated as Lewis struggled to provide a clear explanation. Finally, he stated, "I was angry, and things escalated. What happened, happened." The detectives remained skeptical, concerned that this vague admission might create doubt among jurors in a potential trial. They pressed Lewis for more information, and he eventually confessed to the crime. Chanel recalled that during the attack, his punches knocked out several of Karina's teeth and injured his own hand. The struggle lasted around 5 minutes, during which time Karina fiercely resisted, scratching and biting to avoid drawing attention. Lewis dragged her off the path and into the tall grass, where he attempted to undress and assault her. Despite being shocked, Karina continued to resist. Eventually, Chanel strangled her until she was no longer alive. When questioned about his relationship with the victim, Chanel claimed he had not known Karina before the attack and that it was a chance encounter. The motive behind the attack was unexpected and bizarre. Chanel's hatred and uncontrollable aggression were triggered by a neighborhood gang member playing loud music for hours on end. These negative emotions were then unleashed on Karina. Although the reason behind the attack was strange, investigators' confusion was resolved when DNA comparison results matched perfectly. The microscopic traces found on the victim's body and phone belonged to Chanel, leading the police and prosecutor to conclude that the case was solved and ready for court. Chanel Lewis's motive for killing Karina Vetrano seemed unlikely. However, it's possible that he had seen her before at the park with her father and had become interested in her. When she rejected him, he might have become angry and attacked her, leading to a tragic series of events. At the trial, which began on November 5, 2018, Lewis pleaded not guilty despite his earlier confessions to the authorities. His family also denied his involvement in the crime. The prosecution charged Lewis with murder and sexual assault, which carried a sentence of 25 years to life imprisonment. The debate about Lewis's guilt went beyond the courtroom, with the media also discussing the case. Lewis's defense team argued that his arrest was unlawful and that there was racial bias and discrimination. However, the judge dismissed these allegations, stating that the investigation was conducted legally. The prosecution presented DNA evidence that linked Lewis to the crime scene. The defense argued that the evidence was contaminated due to the large number of people present at the scene, including the victim's father. Nevertheless, a forensic biologist stated that the odds of the DNA belonging to someone else were incredibly low, 1 in 6 trillion. The prosecution also presented Lewis's phone records, which showed that he had searched for terms related to forgiveness and second chances in Catholicism. This raised the question, what was Lewis trying to atone for? The release of Lewis's confession video sparked further controversy, with the defense arguing that the confession was coerced and that the police had fabricated evidence. The defense suggested that the initial investigation was botched and that Lewis was made a scapegoat due to public pressure for an arrest. The jury was impressed by the defense's arguments, but ultimately they were unable to reach a verdict, leading to a mistrial on November 21, 2018. A retrial was scheduled for March 2019, and after 5 hours of deliberation, the jury found Lewis guilty of Karina Vetrano's murder. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole on July 23, 2019. Despite the defense's attempts to delay the trial, the jury found Lewis guilty. The case highlights the deep-seated prejudices and fears in society. Karina Vetrano's death serves as a grim reminder for women to be cautious. In the end, justice may have been served, but both families lost their children. The hope is that the truth was uncovered and that an innocent man is not behind bars while the real perpetrator remains free. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today, we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Sabrina Cuiter. Sabrina Cuiter was born on December 5, 1982, in a London suburb to parents of French and Algerian descent, giving her a unique cultural heritage. This blend of influences likely contributed to her striking features and fiery personality. As the eldest of 4 children, Sabrina was cherished by her family and often held up as a model for her siblings. At the age of 2, her family moved to Paris, France, where she spent most of her childhood and adolescence. However, during her school years, Sabrina's complex and difficult personality began to emerge. Former classmates have described her as arrogant, domineering, self-absorbed, and extremely selfish. She had few friends, either at school or in her neighborhood, as she believed she was superior to those around her. Sabrina was particularly hostile towards bright and outgoing girls, viewing them as rivals and enemies. Despite her stunning physical appearance, she was a striking brunette with brown eyes and an impressive figure. Sabrina's inability to form genuine connections with others held her back from pursuing a career in modeling, where her looks could have taken her far. Instead, she often sought to manipulate those around her. As a child, Sabrina showed promise in sports and had some interest in music, but her lack of persistence and inconsistent effort hindered her from achieving success in either area. Later, Sabrina alleged that she was mistreated by her maternal relatives in France during her childhood, but these claims were never confirmed. In contrast, her family maintained that they spoiled her and that she always sought attention. During her teenage years, Sabrina's athletic ambitions were prematurely halted by a back injury, which in turn led to her dependence on prescription painkillers. In an attempt to obtain these drugs illegally, she was arrested and received a warning from the police. Sabrina was extremely self-absorbed, constantly craving attention and admiration for her appearance. She firmly believed that her future would be filled with luxury, glamour, and interactions with celebrities, and was even convinced she was born to be a star. At times, her fantasies became so vivid that they distorted her perception of reality, making her believe she belonged in the Hollywood elite. Sabrina holds a degree in English and French literature from the Sorbonne, but since 2006, she has falsely claimed to work in various roles in the fashion industry, such as stylist, makeup artist, fashion designer, or designer, despite lacking actual expertise. Sabrina, known for her stunning looks, has a history of captivating men and exploiting their affection. However, she never considered any of her suitors worthy of a serious relationship, waiting instead for a submissive partner who would obey her every command. After completing her education, Sabrina remained unclear about her life goals, feeling entitled to everything without putting in effort. Nevertheless, she enrolled at the prestigious Sorbonne University and simultaneously worked at a sweet shop to support herself financially. It was there, at the age of 18, that she met Wissam Medouni. Medouni, 6 years her senior, was a manager at a major French company's head office and a graduate of one of Paris's most prestigious universities. He aspired to earn a master's degree to advance his career, despite not being particularly handsome or part of elite social circles. He fell deeply in love with Sabrina and was willing to fulfill all her desires. Sabrina, in turn, found Medouni appealing, seeing him as someone she could manipulate and as a ticket to a wealthy lifestyle. She was drawn to his ambition and capacity for career success, as well as his willingness to pamper and spoil her. The couple began dating in 2000 and moved in together within a few months. Sabrina's true nature was soon exposed as she attempted to control Medouni in every way possible. When her demands were not met, she would throw tantrums, manipulate others, and even resort to physical violence. Moreover, she began to openly cheat on Medouni, not even trying to hide her infidelity or justify her actions. She would engage in flings with anyone, from casual acquaintances to Medouni's closest friends or colleagues. Despite Medouni's numerous attempts to end the relationship and leave her, he always found himself returning to her, unable to break free from his deep love for Sabrina. In 2001, Medouni achieved his master's degree and a significant promotion, resulting in a substantial increase in income. He spent lavishly on Sabrina's luxurious clothing and entertainment. As his family owned several properties in Paris, he managed them and handed over all the rental income to Sabrina. Medouni, who shared Franco-Algerian roots with Sabrina, saw her as a kindred spirit. According to reports, in the fall of 2001, they had a Muslim ceremony, which was documented by a certificate from the Argento Mosque. However, this religious ceremony was not enough to make their union official and legal. The couple had a son, whose paternity Medouni officially recognized. Years later, however, a Frenchman named Anthony Francois claimed to be the child's biological father. Francois, who would later testify in Sabrina's trial, described her as volatile, unpredictable, promiscuous, and manipulative. In 2008, the global financial crisis led to Wissam Madouni losing his high-paying job when the company he worked for went bankrupt. Around the same time, Sabrina Kuiter became fixated on moving to London, and she made the decision to relocate without fully consulting Madouni. With little choice, Madouni followed her to London, where he found work at a major English bank. However, Sabrina struggled to establish herself in the fashion industry due to her lack of skills, experience, and formal education. Over time, she had to lower her expectations and took on various jobs, including working as a nanny, in a call center, at a cafe, and even attempting network marketing. Sabrina's pursuit of love and success took an unexpected turn when she revived her teenage passion for music and added musician and composer to her credentials. Despite her enthusiasm, Sabrina faced challenges finding professional opportunities in the music industry. She attended numerous auditions and social events, hoping to make valuable connections. Sabrina met Mark Walton, a famous musician and songwriter, at an event. Mark was one of the founding members of Boyzone, a well-known Irish boy band. After leaving the group, he became a successful producer and music mogul, working with artists like Jennifer Lopez, Jessica Simpson, and Lady Gaga. By 2016, his net worth had exceeded $1 billion. To Sabrina, Mark was the perfect person to meet, her key to a world of fame and luxury. She impressed Mark with her beauty and charisma, and he fell in love with her at first sight. As their relationship progressed quickly, Sabrina made an effort to be pleasant and endearing, eventually ending her relationship with Madouni as she saw a promising future with Mark. Mark's previous relationship and child didn't deter Sabrina, and soon the couple moved in together, living in a luxurious house in an upscale London area. Mark covered all the expenses, including the rent for the lavish house Sabrina had chosen. For several months, Sabrina lived the luxurious life she had always dreamed of, socializing with celebrities, attending elite events, wearing designer clothing, and even appearing in glossy magazines. Sabrina found it difficult to manage Mark because she was afraid of losing him. Her inability to control her nature eventually led to jealousy towards every woman around Mark. Over time, Sabrina's demands grew, and she began to crave more gifts and luxury. Mark tried to please her by showering her with designer clothes, jewelry, and taking her to upscale restaurants and clubs, but no matter what he did, it was never enough to satisfy her. Sabrina's home had a revolving door of staff and nannies due to her growing paranoia. She suspected them of theft or trying to seduce Mark, which led to a high turnover rate. Her irrational behavior pushed Mark to the edge, and in 2011, he ended their relationship and moved to California, leaving Sabrina with nothing. When Mark left, Sabrina lost the luxurious lifestyle she had grown accustomed to. In an attempt to win him back, she started giving interviews accusing Mark of being violent and abusive. She would call him, crying and begging him to return, even threatening to take her own life, but none of these tactics worked. Realizing she had lost Mark, Sabrina reached out to her ex-partner, Wissam Madouni, whose career was thriving as a bank executive. He forgave her and took her back, still harboring feelings for her. They resumed living together, and soon after reuniting, Sabrina discovered she was pregnant. Sabrina informed Walton, who, through his lawyers, offered to provide for the child and her, offering a monthly allowance. However, Walton requested a paternity test after the child's birth to confirm he was the father. Sabrina's refusal to undergo the test hinted at her uncertainty about the child's paternity, which could have secured her substantial regular payments. Instead of accepting the proposed allowance, Sabrina demanded that Walton double the amount. When Walton refused, she launched a campaign against him. Taking to social media, Sabrina made false accusations that Walton was obsessed with her, extremely jealous of Madouni, and had even threatened them physically. She claimed that Walton had broken into their home, assaulted Madouni, traumatized their children, and sexually assaulted her in violent ways. However, her allegations were unfounded, as Walton had a solid alibi, having been in the United States since their breakup. After Walton sued her for defamation and the police threatened to take action, Sabrina stopped making accusations against her ex-boyfriend. Sabrina settled in Ossembledon, southwest London, with Maduni and their 2 children, and it seemed as though the conflict had been resolved. However, Sabrina, who was not accustomed to managing household chores and found it challenging to care for 2 children, decided to hire a nanny who could also help with the housework. She posted an online job advertisement and conducted personal interviews, but most candidates did not meet her expectations, and those who did not stay long in her household. A young French woman, Sophie Léon, responded to the job advertisement. Because Sophie was in her hometown in France at the time, the interview was conducted via video call. The 19-year-old modestly agreed to all the terms, taking care of a child, helping with household chores, and cooking, in exchange for a symbolic weekly wage of £50, including full board and lodging with her future employer. Born on January 7, 1996, in Troyes, a small town between Oise and Sens, Sophie grew up in a humble family. Her parents, Catherine and Patrick Leon, were ordinary workers struggling to make ends meet. After completing her education, Sophie earned a diploma in childcare, but she didn't want to work in her hometown. Instead, she dreamed of moving to a big city. Known for her kind and open-hearted nature, Sophie was loved by those who knew her. She was shy, quiet, and plain in appearance, and wore glasses due to poor vision, which made her a bit self-conscious. During their conversation, Sabrina identified Sophie, who seemed ordinary and unremarkable, as the perfect person to manipulate. Sophie was keen to gain experience and good references, so she was willing to work for very little money. To Sophie, Sabrina appeared to be a serious and trustworthy employer, which she mentioned to her parents before leaving for London. At first, everything seemed to go smoothly for Sophie Leonette, who innocently believed that working for the Cuiters would be a great way to start her nanny career. She quickly formed a close bond with the children, completed her household chores as specified in her contract, and had sufficient time and resources to improve her English language skills and explore the city's attractions. This peaceful period lasted for several months, and all appeared to be going well. Problems arose when Maduni lost his job, leaving the family with only one stable source of income: the monthly child support payments from Walton. Sabrina then demanded that Walton increase these payments, but he requested a DNA test to confirm his paternity first. As a result, the family struggled financially, finding it hard to afford their rent and basic necessities. Sabrina, who was unwilling to give up her luxuries and determined to maintain her socialite lifestyle, became increasingly irritable and aggressive, often taking her frustrations out on the young nanny. With their remaining funds, the couple attempted to start a bakery business, but it failed. Sabrina then turned to Walton, asking for a large sum of money to launch her clothing line, but he categorically refused. This led to tears and complaints from Sabrina about poverty. Sabrina frequently vented to Leonette about her ex-lover, and the nanny tried to console her employer. One theory claims Sabrina Cooder masterminded a blackmail plot targeting Walton. She allegedly planned to frame Sophie as Walton's partner in crime and lover, planted in their home to cause chaos and put their children in danger. Sabrina supposedly believed Walton was using Sophie as a tool for revenge, motivated by the nanny's supposed infatuation with him. Cooder allegedly wanted to record Sophie's fabricated confessions and present them to the police as evidence, which would be enough to demand compensation from Walton for his alleged wrongdoing. However, Sophie refused to give false statements on camera. An alternative theory, as argued by Cooder's lawyers in court, suggests that due to her mental health issues, Sabrina genuinely believed in her conspiracy theory, viewing Sophie as an enemy and a threat to her family. According to this version, Sabrina didn't coerce the nanny into giving false testimony. Instead, she sincerely believed Sophie was Walton's accomplice, infiltrating their household to harm them. Sophie's life rapidly deteriorated into a living hell. She was housed in a wealthy home, but it felt like a torture chamber in the basement. At first, her employers piled extra work on her without a pay rise. Soon she was trapped in a relentless routine of chores from dawn till late at night, leaving her no personal time or freedom to leave the house. To make matters worse, her salary was stopped, and her passport was confiscated to prevent her from escaping or returning to France, effectively holding her captive. Her family contact was strictly monitored. The situation only got worse. Sophie was hardly fed and was coerced into making false accusations against Walton, a man she had never met or known. Her communication was limited to screams, insults, and threats, with accusations of theft flying her way. She was warned that she would be imprisoned if she refused to comply with their demands against the musician. Quitters used brutal tactics when threats failed. Sophie was confined to a cold basement, given scarce food, and physically abused. She grew weak and emaciated. Slaps and hair-pulling escalated to violent assaults, including a broken nose. The beatings became daily, with new cruelties designed to inflict pain. The London house basement became a torture chamber with no escape. In 2017, Sabrina took Sophie Leon, a malnourished and abused 21-year-old nanny, to a police station to testify against Mark Walton. However, when questioned, Sophie remained silent. The police, instead of helping her, allowed everyone to leave despite her obvious signs of abuse, including weighing under 88 pounds, hair loss, a missing tooth, and a limp. In mid-September 2017, Sophie Leon called her mother, Catherine, in tears, confessing that she wanted to return home but lacked the money to do so. Catherine reassured Sophie that she would buy her a ticket and told her to pack her bags immediately. Sadly, this was the last time Catherine would ever hear her daughter's voice. Just a few days later, on the evening of September 20th, 2017, the authorities were alerted by the Quitters' neighbors, who had noticed a fire in the yard. What alarmed them was not the fire itself, but the overpowering, sweetly greasy smell it emitted, which one neighbor likened to the smell of burning flesh and hair, combined with something unidentifiable. The thick smoke lingered, leaving a putrid stench on clothes and skin. When firefighters and police arrived, the homeowners, who seemed strangely calm and oblivious to the reason for the emergency visit, met them after extinguishing the fire. A charred human hand was discovered in the ashes. The couple was promptly arrested, and heavily burned human remains were recovered from the fire. Although the gender and age of the deceased could not be determined initially, the body was eventually identified as Sophie Leonette, recognizable due to the melted metal frame of her distinctive glasses, which were found fused to her skull. The investigation into Sophie Leon's cause of death was highly complex due to the severe fire damage to her body. Despite these challenges, forensic experts discovered evidence of extreme physical abuse, including multiple rib fractures, jaw damage, and blunt force trauma to her skull and limbs, indicating she sustained these injuries while still alive. Further examination revealed missing teeth and severe nose damage, suggesting Sophie endured prolonged and intense beatings, resulting in broken bones and knocked-out teeth. Disturbing video recordings found in the house exposed the sadistic nature of her captors, who tortured and coerced Sophie into confessing to colluding with Walton and intending to harm the children. The videos showed her being beaten with objects such as fists, an iron cord, and a golf club, as well as being subjected to electric shock torture. Additionally, she was humiliated, forced to submerge her head in a toilet until she began to suffocate. Experts believe it is likely that Sophie died from asphyxiation before being burned, sparing her from the agony of being alive during the burning. Sabrina Quitter and Wissem Medouni denied any wrongdoing and displayed no regret for their heinous act. After killing their nanny, Medouni went to a nearby supermarket where he purchased firelighter fluid to burn the body and groceries for his family's dinner, behaving as if nothing untoward had occurred. In March 2018, the court proceedings against the ruthless duo commenced. Sabrina attempted to depict herself as a victim, alleging that Mark Walton's constant harassment had pushed her into a pathological state. However, medical evaluations revealed that although Sabrina suffered from mental health issues, she was not insane and had full awareness of her actions. Wissam, who was physically fit, was psychologically dependent on Sabrina, submitting to her will and obeying her blindly. On June 26, 2018, the court delivered a guilty verdict to the couple, convicting them of torturing, humiliating, and murdering their nanny in exceptionally cruel circumstances. The court handed down life imprisonment sentences with the possibility of parole only after 30 years. Notwithstanding this, both defendants refused to accept responsibility for their actions and instead appealed to reduce their sentences. Sabrina even attempted to fake mental illness to be transferred from prison to a hospital, but this ploy was unsuccessful. Mark Walton, who attended the trial, was overcome with remorse for his ex-partner's brutal actions, which were driven by a warped desire for his attention and financial gain. He offered his heartfelt condolences to the victim's parents and spontaneously pledged a substantial donation to support the grief-stricken family who had lost their beloved daughter. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today, we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Luke Jobson. Born and raised in Thornaby, Luke Jobson attended St. Patrick's Comprehensive and Harewood Primary Schools. With a promising career ahead, he was mere months away from qualifying as an electrical and mechanical engineer after completing 4 years of studying and an apprenticeship. A talented sportsman, Luke's impressive football skills earned him acclaim as a center forward for Thornaby Central in his younger years. One coach fondly remembered him as the fastest runner on 2 legs. His father, Stuart, cherished memories of Luke's passion for fashion and his meticulous attention to detail, often playfully pointing out any creases in his son's shirts. Luke took immense pride in his appearance, always striving to look immaculate. On Saturday, January 26, 2019, Luke and his friends visited a popular nightclub called The Keys in a small town named Yarm, where all the nightlife is concentrated on the High Street, which is where The Keys is still located today. Luke went to The Keys on Saturday night but failed to return home. When his parents tried calling him the next morning, Sunday, he didn't answer. Additionally, his friends were unable to provide any information about his whereabouts. As a result, his family issued an urgent appeal on Facebook, which prompted dozens of people to join the search for him. On Sunday, the police released their first official statement saying they were searching for Luke. A Cleveland police spokeswoman expressed extreme concern, stating that Luke's disappearance was out of character because he had not returned home or contacted family or friends. The police appealed to the public for any private CCTV or dash cam footage in the area that might aid their investigation. It was established that Luke Jobson was involved in a possible altercation shortly before he vanished. According to social media reports, he got into a fight with several individuals outside a nightclub around 2 a.m. The last sighting of Luke was near Yarm's school at approximately 2:15 a.m. While the police investigated this information, their primary focus at the time was finding the missing young man. Luke's girlfriend, Danny, took to social media to make a heartfelt plea for help, describing her ordeal as an absolute nightmare and begging anyone with information to come forward. Luke's cousin, Jake, also made an emotional appeal on Facebook, asking the public to help locate him. On Sunday, friends and family launched a search for Luke near the river in Yarm, which soon escalated into a large-scale operation. The following morning, hundreds of people gathered in the Yarm school car park, braving the bitter cold to join the search effort. The turnout was a testament to the community spirit, with many strangers among the crowd. Cars arrived filled with volunteers, while others walked to the scene bundled up in winter gear, ready to lend a hand. In total, more than 300 people participated in the search. 18 large groups combed areas as far afield as Preston Park, Stokesley, Cowboy Wood, and Roseberry Topping. Meanwhile, specialist police search teams scoured the riverbanks near Yarm School. However, at 1 p.m., the search teams received devastating news they had all feared. Despite the tireless efforts of the emergency services, Luke's family and friends, the operation ended in tragedy. The search was called off after police discovered a body in the river. Cleveland police have confirmed that a body found in the river at Yarm is that of 22-year-old Luke Jobson, who had been missing. The officers who were searching for him had recovered the body. Our thoughts are with Luke's family and friends during this difficult time, and specially trained officers will continue to provide them with support following his death. Luke's parents, Lisa Jobson and Stuart Banks, have paid a heartfelt tribute to their son. They described him as a popular, ambitious, and young man who was passionate about the gym. His mother, Lisa, said she and Luke's father are extremely proud of the person they raised. Luke's death sparked an overwhelming outpouring of emotion in Teesside. On social media, an enormous number of tributes poured in from friends and loved ones, all of whom were deeply saddened by his sudden passing. In Yarm, a massive crowd gathered on Tuesday evening to hold a vigil in his honor. As a mark of respect, everyone lit candles and added ribbons to their social media profiles. Close to 1,000 people attended the vigil, and Luke's family expressed their gratitude for the public support during the difficult days that followed his disappearance. The police launched an investigation into Luke's death and interviewed numerous individuals, including those who were at a nightclub on the night of the incident. They soon obtained CCTV footage that corroborated earlier reports of a confrontation between Luke and others. News of the altercation as the likely cause of his death spread rapidly after his disappearance, with speculation about the circumstances continuing to circulate on social media. Initially, the police only confirmed reports of a fight before Luke vanished, and they arrested 6 teenagers, 3 16-year-olds and 3 18-year-olds, on suspicion of his murder. However, they released all of them shortly after, and the detectives pressed on with their investigation. The case saw a new development only in the following January. Cleveland police charged 5 individuals aged between 17 and 20, which involves using or threatening unlawful violence, not with Luke's murder. They will soon appear in court. One of the teenagers, who was 17 at the time and has since turned 18, cannot be named due to legal age restrictions. The others are Edwin Taha, 20, who denies starting the fight, Ryan Alpe, 19, who claims there was no fight, Ali Abdul Majid, 19, who denies guilt, and Hamad Asif, 18, who also denies a fight took place. Reports suggest Edwin Taha led the gang. Under English and Welsh law, a person is guilty of affray if they use or threaten unlawful violence, causing a reasonably firm person at the scene to fear for their safety. When multiple individuals are involved, their collective conduct is considered. The CCTV footage reveals Luke fleeing the scene, suggesting he was fearful for his safety. Not only were there verbal threats against him, but physical ones as well, which will be explored later. To understand the events leading up to Luke Jobson's death, we must first identify the spark that ignited the conflict that night. Unfortunately, none of the suspects have provided a clear answer to this question. Additionally, it remains unclear where Luke's friends, with whom he was at the nightclub, were during the altercation. The police-released recording fails to clarify this. Judging from the footage, it appears Luke had no intention of leaving the club, as he was wearing only a t-shirt, with his jacket still inside the establishment. The footage reveals Luke standing up to the gang, which prompted them to chase him, forcing him to flee for his life. Fortunately, Luke's athletic abilities enabled him to outrun his pursuers, but Taha and the others soon returned to the nightclub, got into Abdul Majid's Volkswagen Golf, and eventually caught up with Luke near the school. After exiting the car, Taha sprayed an unknown substance, likely pepper spray, into Luke's face, causing him to lose his vision. In an attempt to escape, Luke climbed over the wall and entered the Yarm school grounds, where he was last seen on CCTV cameras entering the boathouse. Sadly, Luke was never seen again after that. Luke Jobson, who had a passion for life and strived to be the best version of himself, tragically lost his life and was found dead in the water near his school 2 days after he failed to emerge from the boathouse. The cause of his death was determined to be drowning. During the investigation, all suspects initially denied any involvement, and none were taken into custody before the trial. Edwin Taha was released on bail, but later, along with Ali Abdul Maid, they both changed their pleas to guilty for their roles in the fight during the first court hearing on September 28, 2020. The autopsy was performed by pathologists Dr. Nigel Cooper and Dr. Jennifer Bolton, and the results were presented in court. The toxicology report revealed that Luke had consumed a significant amount of alcohol before his death, which would have likely caused clear signs of intoxication in an average person. Additionally, traces of a banned substance were found in his system, which he had taken some time before his death. The court was told that the combination of alcohol and the banned substance would have made Luke more susceptible to the effects of hypothermia. Luke's death was not caused by any injuries or underlying natural diseases. There was no sign of assault or inflammation in his eyes. The autopsy found no evidence that he had been sprayed with a substance before he died. However, witnesses told the inquest that Luke was pepper sprayed, struggled to walk, and was unable to see. After the incident, Taha returned to the high street and bragged to bystanders about pepper spraying Luke. The senior coroner, Claire Bailey, concluded that Luke was incapacitated by the pepper spray. The verdict was announced in October 2020. Lisa Jobson fought back tears as she read a statement outside Crown Court, where 2 young criminals were facing justice for their role in the death of her 22-year-old son, Luke. She described the gang that surrounded and chased him through Yarm High Street as a pack of wolves. His family loved and protected him from the day he was born. He was their world, their only boy, and they couldn't have wished for a better son. Now, his family misses him every minute of every day, and their pain will never go away. Their lives have been destroyed, and they will never be the same people again. They know exactly what they did, including Edwin Taha, who sprayed Luke's eyes and face, causing him hurt and pain. His family can't get out of their heads every minute of that night, and the faces of his killers are the last ones their boy had to see on this earth, a living hell. They want someone to take away their pain and bring Luke back, but no one can. At the trial, Abdul Majid's lawyer argued that his client was not aware that Taha was carrying pepper spray. According to the lawyer, Majid did not know that one of his co-accused had a weapon, and he did not expect the victim to be assaulted with it. During the hearing, Taha's lawyer mentioned that his client had a difficult upbringing, but acknowledged that this was no excuse for his actions. The lawyer explained that something was said on the night of the incident that triggered the events. And although Taha made poor decisions, he accepts that what happened was wrong. Taha's lawyer, John Nixon, also revealed that Taha had a challenging childhood, having moved to the UK from France at the age of 4 without speaking English. After his mother left him and his brother with a foster family in Stockton when he was 10, Taha struggled to cope. Judge Howard Crone informed the 2 defendants that, although they were not legally responsible for Luke's death, the events that unfolded would not have occurred if Luke had not been chased along Yarm High Street. Consequently, Luke would not have entered the school and boathouse, and ultimately, he would not have drowned in the River Tees on October 30th, 2020. Edwin Taha, 20, pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 21 months in prison. Additionally, he received a further 4 years and 4 months of imprisonment for charges related to prohibited substances. Ali Abdul Majid, 19, of Corvus Drive, Stockton, also admitted. He was sentenced to 15 months, suspended for 18 months, and ordered to complete 300 hours of unpaid work. After the hearing at Teesside Crown Court, Temporary Detective Chief Inspector Sarah Robinson the senior investigating officer, explained that police inquiries revealed an altercation on Yarm High Street, preceding Luke's pursuit by multiple males in a vehicle. When they caught up with him, Luke was sprayed in the eyes with a noxious substance, which severely affected him. Regardless of the intentions behind the male's actions that evening, Luke's family are left grieving the loss of their beloved son and brother. The impact on his entire family has been immense and cannot be measured. While nothing can bring Luke back, now that the criminal case has concluded, we hope it brings some sense of closure to his family, allowing them to move forward with their lives. The prosecution has dropped charges against two individuals, 19-year-old Ryan Alpi and 18-year-old Hamad Asif. In October 2020, Chris Atkinson of the Crown Prosecution Service made a statement after the sentencing of Taha and Abdul Majid. He expressed sympathy for the family of Luke Jobson, acknowledging that this would be a difficult time for them. Atkinson emphasized that while Taha and Majid were found guilty of being involved in an affray with Luke before his death, there is no evidence to suggest that their actions directly led to the tragic events that occurred after the attack. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Michael Van Eck. The city of Welcome gained widespread attention due to a grievous crime that occurred there in 2011. When the criminals were identified, the prosecution was baffled. This notorious case became the 10th in the history of international criminal activity. During the investigation, it was discovered that the case involved followers of Satanism and occultism. Michael Van Eck was born on August 14, 1987 in the city of Welcome. He became the only brother to four sisters, Natasha, Michelle, Bianca, and Ariana. The boy grew up in a large and close-knit family. His parents were caring and loving people who provided a decent life for their children. The head of the family worked hard and organized his own business. The mother created a favorable atmosphere in the home for the growth and development of the younger generation. Michael was sociable and kind, and showed diligence in school and sports. He even earned a black belt in karate, which he was very proud of. This gave him confidence and resilience. After finishing school, the young man trained as an electrician. This in-demand profession opened the doors to good earnings and promising work. The young man worked at mine number 4 of the Beatrix mine in the small town of Thunison. He did not stop there and continued his education to become an engineer. In 2011, Michael signed up on a dating site. He did this to distract himself from a breakup and to meet new people. It appeared that fortune was on his side. One day, among the many photos and profiles, the lonely young man became interested in the profile of a sweet and smiling girl. As they corresponded, the young man discovered that their interests aligned. Like him, she disliked noisy parties and drunken gatherings, and sought true love and a strong family. Michael was pleasantly surprised to find a suitable match on the internet, especially since he still lived with his parents. He shared his joys and concerns with his mother on April 2nd. The son boasted to her that he was going on a date, and he prepared thoroughly for it to please the girl. He withdrew his first paycheck of 8,000 rand from his card. The only thing that troubled the young man was the unusual place his friend chose for their first meeting. It was the city cemetery. Apparently not to worry his parents, he kept quiet about it. Around 9 p.m. that same day, Michael said goodbye to his family and left the house. He headed to the designated place in a silver Peugeot 2007, a gift from his parents for his coming of age, as tradition demanded. The girl was a little late, but her appearance was impressive. The stranger from the internet arrived in a pristine white dress and smiled. The conversation was relaxed, after which she suggested continuing the evening further and invited the young man to a distant part of the cemetery. There, a meadow awaited them with a spread blanket. On it lay a basket of fruits and wine. After the young people had a glass each, the beautiful companion kissed a stunned Michael. Suddenly, the pleasant feeling of the kiss turned to pain and horror. The unsuspecting young man became part of a sinister plan, since the innocent appearance of his pen pal did not match her inner world. Shanae Van Heerden was born in 1991 during a crisis period for her parents. When her mother found out she was pregnant, the couple decided to delay their divorce and give their relationship another chance. However, their attempts to reconcile and improve their life together were unsuccessful. The family environment only worsened. Her mother openly disliked the little girl, seeing her as a tie to her husband. After the divorce, she took the children and moved away from her former husband. However, the failed marriage was not the main reason for her coldness. She continued to lack love and attention towards her children even after the relationship ended. All three children felt lonely and misunderstood, but Shanae suffered the most. She grew up withdrawn and sullen. From an early age, she exhibited psychological issues. She talked about death and drew incomprehensible pictures. Eventually, the little girl developed an imaginary friend named Azazel. Concerned about their daughter's behavior, her grandparents thought she was possessed. Thus, they decided to take her to church, where she underwent an exorcism ritual. According to a witness, her body convulsed during the prayers. In reality, Shanae was scared of crowds and clearly frightened by the ordeal. The shock could have triggered an epileptic seizure. The traumatic event deeply impacted the young girl's memory, causing her to develop a fear of the dark. Additionally, her mother once told her that toys come to life at night, which led the frightened daughter to tape her doll's eyes shut and tie their bodies with shoelaces. As she grew older, her mental condition worsened. At age 10, she nearly harmed a houseguest with a knife while visiting her father. Only after this incident did they seek psychiatric help for Shanae. Following a specialist's evaluation, she was prescribed sedatives. The medication had a positive effect on her mood and well-being. She became calmer and more friendly. During a remission period, her father spent more time with his daughter. He often picked her up from school and took her hunting with him. By sharing his hobby, he aimed to give her the attention she lacked. The unstable teenager enjoyed her father's activity. She later confessed that she found pleasure in butchering carcasses and skinning animals. This led her to bring home dead animals, starting with rats and birds, and eventually progressing to cats and dogs. She enjoyed cutting flesh and occasionally inflicted injuries on herself. During an investigation, her sister revealed that at age 12, Shanae befriended an older man who introduced her to forbidden substances and took advantage of her condition. Her sisters did not inform their parents, but Shanae ended the destructive relationship. This experience undoubtedly had a negative impact on her troubled psyche. At age 15, her mother moved to New Zealand, where she met another man and stayed with him. Over time, she never returned for her children. They remained with their father and stepmother, who tried their best to provide for the children, though they did not fully understand the severity of the youngest daughter's issues. Her behavior was largely attributed to adolescence. The situation worsened a year later when Shanae became involved with a 22-year-old young man interested in Satanism, occultism, and voodoo cults. The boyfriend became a real mentor to the impressionable young woman, but he was cruel in character, often suppressing and demeaning her. Nonetheless, a supportive family environment and psychotherapy yielded positive results. By her 17th birthday, Shanae's life began to improve. She broke off dangerous connections, graduated from high school, and enrolled in college, where she studied art and graphic design. After Shanae lost interest in Satanism and stopped using forbidden substances, her emotional state improved. She excelled in her studies and secured a job in her field. At her new job, Shanae found support not only from her colleagues, but also from management. It turned out she had a real talent for visual arts, which brought her respect and recognition in her professional field. At the same time, she started dating a man named Warren. To outsiders, her life appeared completely normal. Her family and close friends did not discuss her past, hoping that the difficult times were behind her. However, what was happening in her soul was hard to say. Perhaps her inner demons were merely lying dormant. Her father was the happiest for Shanae. He hoped that she had finally matured and would soon marry. However, his expectations were not met. The obstacle emerged from an unexpected source. Warren had a friend named Roy, who considered himself highly sensitive. Despite Shanae's sweet and friendly demeanor, he sensed something repellent and malevolent in her. Yet Roy's words were not taken seriously, as her outward appearance did not match his perceptions. One day, he pulled her aside and asked, "Who is Norman?" Each time he saw her, this name popped into the clairvoyant's mind. The young man thought she might not be faithful to his friend, so he decided to ask her directly. In response, Shanae unexpectedly spat in his face and demanded he stop bothering her with foolish questions. It later became known that Norman was the second name of Zazzle, her imaginary childhood friend. Following the incident, the dynamics between the young people changed. At one of the parties, Shanae's attention shifted to a 24-year-old named Martin. Although the young man was generally calm and sociable, there were unpleasant rumors about him. Martin Vander Marway was born into a well-off and respected family. Unlike Shanae, he had excellent relationships with both parents. As a child, he was smart and well-mannered, performing well academically. However, it turned out that since the age of 6, he had been suffering from a mental illness. Around that time, he began experiencing hallucinations. His parents recounted that, according to their son, a certain entity appeared to him, convincing the boy that he was endowed with incredible strength. Martin believed this and felt special. Gradually, his mental condition worsened and his behavior changed due to problems at school and home. At the age of 14, Vander Marway was hospitalized in a psychiatric facility where he was diagnosed with schizophrenia. Unfortunately, conventional treatment did not help. Since the family was financially secure, his parents dedicated all their efforts to finding effective medications. Thanks to the efforts of both family and doctors, the necessary drugs were eventually found. With these, nearly all deviations were controlled, except for sporadic outbursts of aggression. Martin's once witnessed a stray cat being mauled by dogs, which made a deep impression on him. Instead of feeling disgust or pity, he hid the animal's body and watched it. This led him to start torturing animals. He later dropped out of school and began helping his father in the carpentry shop. In the future, Martin dreamed of continuing the family tradition. While working, his condition improved. He no longer wanted to do bad things to animals and take their lives. For this reason, he stopped taking medication. Everyone was wary of his decision, but the young man insisted that the disease had receded and that he was in control. Unfortunately, this turned out to be an inevitable mistake. His mental state gradually deteriorated. It was around this time that Martins met Shanae. These unstable young people found each other and began dating. However, outwardly they looked happy, so their parents were happy with their relationship. Of course, neither of them admitted to the problems their children had faced in the past. In the end, their union led to horrifying consequences. At first, the couple was open to the outside world, socializing and attending parties. Acquaintances recalled that they sometimes noticed cuts on the hands of the young people. They joked that they were engaged in intimate experiments. After that, they began to distance themselves from people. They became interested in Satanism, voodoo cults, and occult practices. They also became interested in infamous serial criminals. In February 2011, Martins posted a picture with Shanae on one of his social media pages. The pair were hugging, and the caption under the photo read, "Killers," with an ambiguous emoji. At the time, no one took their post seriously. Eventually, the young man asked his girlfriend's father for a marriage license. Mr. Van Heron was incredibly happy. Gradually, their sick fantasies turned into a bloodthirsty plan. The crazy couple decided to torture the homeless to death, and they practiced on animals. However, their plan was never realized, as the criminals could not find a suitable victim. Their monstrous plan was waiting for the right moment. The encounter began when Shanae posted her profile on a dating site. Before long, a young man named Michael Van Eck responded. The attractive young man caught the interest of the nefarious couple, and Shanae targeted him for their plans. From the very first messages, the young people started flirting. After a few days of communication, the girls suggested they meet. Michael had been looking forward to this, but he hadn't expected it to come so soon or directly from her. Unfortunately, the somewhat unusual location for their first date didn't raise any alarms for him. Apparently, he was so eager to meet the charming conversationalist from the internet in person that he agreed to the dubious proposal. Shanae and Martin meticulously prepared to bring their wild dream to life. They thought through everything thoroughly: the attire, the means to end a life, and even the setting. Shanae approached the date fully prepared. The long-awaited meeting went exactly as planned for both parties. The victim fell for the bait, an angelic appearance of the girl, and a kiss lulled his alertness. This gesture was the agreed-upon signal for Martin. All this time, the man had been hiding behind the tombstones. He approached Michael from behind and struck him with a knife. Unexpectedly for everyone, the young man resisted. The attackers hadn't anticipated this. Noticing that their new acquaintance was putting up a desperate fight, Shanae intervened. Altogether, they inflicted about 30 knife wounds on the unfortunate young man. Ultimately, completely weakened, Michael begged them to end his suffering. Martin slit Michael's throat. After that, the unthinkable began. The perpetrators dragged the body onto the blanket and proceeded with their plan. The couple severed the young man's right and left legs at the knee and decapitated him. The severed parts were placed in bags. They then decided to hide the body at the site. However, they miscalculated one thing: they had no shovels. Thus, they had to dig the earth with their hands and knives. As a result, they could not make the grave deep enough. After burying the body halfway, the perpetrators left with their trophies. Along the way, they used the victim's vehicle. Martins initially took the wheel, but later handed control over to his companion. The surge of adrenaline prevented him from keeping his eyes on the road. Upon arriving home, they stored the bags with body parts in the refrigerator as if they were groceries. After Vander Marway had somewhat recovered, he started Michael's car and drove it to a troubled neighborhood. The criminals hoped the car would be stolen, so he left it unlocked with the keys in the ignition. The next day, a cemetery worker noticed a fresh burial that wasn't there the day before. His dreadful suspicions were confirmed when he stumbled upon bloody traces and torn clothing in the bushes. He then called over his supervisor to examine the grave. What the unintended witnesses found would long remain etched in their memory. Beneath the soil lay a dismembered male body. The authorities were immediately notified of the grim discovery. At the same time, Michael's parents were beside themselves with worry. Since the previous evening, he hadn't responded to calls. Even if it was presumed that he had stayed overnight at his internet girlfriend's place, he should have made contact by now. Instead, Michael's workplace called his parents. The concerned management wanted to understand why he was absent from a crucial site. Simultaneously, the police received a report about a Peugeot 207 found abandoned in a parking lot. Passers-by were alarmed by the bloodstains on the trunk. After running the vehicle through their database, the owner was identified. Detectives also tracked that before its discovery, the car had been at the cemetery for a long time. The local precinct was already aware of an unidentified body found on its grounds. All signs were suspicious. Armed with this information, law enforcement officials went to the residence of Michael Van Eck. Upon arrival, the officers confirmed their suspicions. His parents had been searching for the young man since the previous day. They asked Michael's mother to come to the cemetery, where forensic specialists and search dogs were already at work, desperately trying to locate missing body parts. At the scene, the woman recognized belongings found, and she also identified her son's body by distinctive burn marks he had sustained in childhood. During the autopsy, the medical examination revealed that the young man had suffered numerous knife wounds, with clear signs of a struggle. It was also determined that the body had been dismembered post-mortem. At least the perpetrators spared him this agony while he was alive. Notably, experts observed that the dismemberment was executed with professional precision, suggesting significant experience. There was no doubt that multiple attackers were involved, as indicated by the number and nature of the wounds and the strength required to subdue the victim. Ultimately, DNA testing confirmed the identity of 23-year-old Michael Van Eck. During the investigation, police confiscated the victim's cell phone and computer. It was established that the last person the young man had communicated with was Shanae Van Heerden. According to their messages, she was the one who invited him to the ominous date at the cemetery. Subsequently, detectives contacted the potential suspect and invited her to give a statement. The young woman did not refuse and arrived with her boyfriend, Martens van der Merwe. The couple was interviewed separately. During the questioning, they confessed to being involved in the group Ending of a Life. Upon learning of the incident, the girl's father rushed to the station. He couldn't believe what he was hearing and asked his daughter if she really was involved in the accusations against her. Shanae calmly confirmed and added that she would willingly do it again. She claimed she had dreamt of this ever since she started hunting with him. The cruel confession of the seemingly sweet girl shocked not only her father, but everyone present. Her boyfriend, Martens, also behaved defiantly as the case gained public attention. He did not hide his pleasure from the public scrutiny and posed for the cameras. It was clear that none of the accused felt remorse for their actions. It turned out that after the crime, if caught, the mad couple planned to end their lives, but the young man changed his mind and his partner followed suit. They wanted to live. During the search of the young couple's apartment, police felt uneasy, to say the least. The environment was horrifying. The walls were adorned with portraits of Shanae depicting her in various guises. In some, she was depicted without eyes, in others without a mouth or ears. All images of the girl were distorted. Additionally, the rooms contained ritual items, animal scalps, knives, and various objects of unclear purpose. Also found were belongings of the deceased young man, glasses, and a wallet. As Martens later confessed, they took Michael's money to buy necessary items for their next crime. However, the most horrifying discovery awaited in the refrigerator. From it, police retrieved Michael's head with the mouth sewn shut. It was assumed that the couple planned to use the young man's head as a ritual bowl. Later on, eyes and ears of the victim were stored in separate containers. The victim's hand and leg were found buried near the murderer's home, alongside the bodies of various animals. The girl's diary contained horrific thoughts and their impending realization. From everything discovered during the inspection, it was clear that the couple planned not just one more crime. The process of ending lives and subsequent mutilation of bodies provided them with unimaginable pleasure. Martens and Shanae underwent multiple evaluations for mental competence. Fortunately, the commission confirmed that the young individuals were aware of their actions and desired the inevitable consequences. Otherwise, they might have avoided punishment and received only mandatory treatment. In November 2011, the trial concerning Shanae took place, treating her as a serial offender despite this being a singular incident. She did not hide her desire to repeat her actions. She told the court that she understands she should feel shame or remorse, but for some reason, she does not comprehend the gravity of her actions through her own moral compass. She can only grasp the severity of her deeds through societal standards and the reactions of others. Psychiatrists declared that the defendant suffers from psychopathic and antisocial disorders, making her apparently more dangerous than her boyfriend, but she is adept at concealing it. Throughout the sentencing, she remained impassive. Shanae Van Heerden was found guilty and sentenced to 35 years in prison without the possibility of parole, 20 years for ending a life, and an additional 15 for robbery and dismemberment. As for Martens, unlike his partner, he defended himself in court. He claimed not to remember the events that occurred until he found himself in jail and behaved arrogantly and aggressively. The defendant admitted to studying Satanism and occultism, trying to understand life and death. He said his relationship with Shanae pushed them both towards committing the crime. During the trial, he apologized to the victim's parents, although his words sounded insincere. He implied that the victim was simply at the wrong place at the wrong time. although in reality, the mad couple had lured the unfortunate man into a premeditated trap. The victim's mother could not contain her distress and struck the accused during one of the sessions. Ultimately, Martens van der Merwe was also found guilty of the charges against him and sentenced to 35 years in prison, but with a chance for parole after serving half of his sentence. Until 2014, the lovers kept in touch behind bars. In his letters, Martens called Shanae a dark goddess, writing, "Lady Blackmore, when you part your lips, words of a dead butterfly spill out. They fall upon my mystical heart and paint it with sweet poison, spreading beautiful darkness through my empty veins." Over time, Shanae ended the relationship with her former lover, feeling that they had grown cold and distant from each other. It is known that in prison, the woman behaves exemplarily, teaching her fellow inmates art and theology. Collectors fascinated by the lives of humanity's worst maniacs and offenders have paid large sums for a photograph of the woman with her autograph, as well as a print of her hand. What is also monstrous in this story is how many troubled individuals there are among us. Sometimes behind an innocent facade lies sheer hell. New acquaintances do not always positively affect our lives. Sometimes they can mark a point of no return. Lisa Maria Kaiser was born in 1994 in a large family where her 8 siblings also grew up. It was a large, but far from prosperous family. Parents were busy with their own problems and did not show love and care towards their children. Moreover, there were rumors that abuse and violence were rampant in the family. The story in question unfolded in the year 2020, at the very time when the whole world was consumed with the fight against COVID-19. In one corner of Ecuador, quietly and unnoticed, truly terrible events were unfolding. Here, in the small parish of Pifo, on the northeastern outskirts of Quito, the protagonist of this tragic story was born and raised. Lisa Maria Kaiser, a woman with an enigmatic gaze, whose life story became a true Ecuadorian nightmare. On that unfortunate Tuesday, October 27, 2020, Lisa sent several messages to the father of her children, David. They were words full of despair, because their paths with David at that time had already almost parted. In these lines, she confessed her love for him and her unexpected new pregnancy. However, in subsequent messages, Lisa wrote that life was losing its meaning for her, and the decision to terminate the pregnancy was inevitable. Throughout the night, Lisa pleaded with David to come to her, but his refusal was resolute. His parents also urged him to stay home, and David took their advice. In the early morning hours of October 28th, neighbors in Lisa's home heard a faint cry for help. Looking out the window, they found a woman lying on the floor with signs of vomiting. The neighbors rushed to help her, immediately calling emergency services. The doctors and police arrived and found Lisa in a critical condition, but still alive. After administering first aid, she was immediately hospitalized. However, in the house, her children, a girl of 5 and a boy of 9, were found unconscious. The doctors were unable to help them. Their little hearts had stopped beating at that point. Authorities learned the identity of the children's father and contacted David Acosta, who, upon learning of the tragedy, immediately arrived on the scene accompanied by his father. He was informed that Lisa was in the hospital and his children were found without signs of life. After several days of fighting for life in the hospital, Lisa finally regained consciousness. By that time, the investigators, guided by their findings, had presented the prosecutor's office with sufficiently convincing arguments to issue an arrest warrant for this mysterious woman. When she was released from the hospital, she was immediately transferred to a social rehabilitation center. The authorities insisted that Lisa undergo a psychological and psychiatric evaluation, as her state of mind required further investigation as part of the upcoming trial. Lisa ended up in a rehabilitation center, and doctors and psychologists took up their work. In a conversation with a criminal psychologist, Lisa opened up about her difficult childhood, where her parents fought and abused each other and their children. Her childhood had a noticeable impact on her state of mind, and moments of quarrels and her parents' divorce became an integral part of her memories. Such a childhood forced Lissa to go to work from the age of 11 to be able to study. The girl strived to escape from her dysfunctional family and build her future in a different way. The expert report also indicated that Lissa had been abused. She talked about how, after several years of marriage, David, her husband, changed dramatically. He began to humiliate his spouse and then to raise his hand against her. On the day of the tragedy with the children, investigators working at the scene found several glasses with liquid residue on the table. These finds later revealed traces of epilepsy pills belonging to one of the children, as well as other chemicals requiring identification. Police officers thoroughly searched the house, and after noticing a strange odor in the kitchen, noticed a suspicious area under the utility room. They broke down the barrier and found a lifeless body wrapped in a blanket, with characteristic signs of having been there for a long time. Later, further investigation revealed that the discovered body belonged to Jaime Yanchaguano, a 28-year-old who had been in contact with Lissa. Jaime had been reported missing by his family days before the gruesome discovery. According to Rosa Yanchaguano, Jaime's sister, he was last seen on October 18th. Rosa told investigators that after her brother disappeared, Lissa called several times inquiring about him. Lissa claimed to have received a text message from Jaime in which he wrote how some illegal substance traffickers were holding him by force and demanding a ransom of $8,000. In doing so, she strongly cautioned Jaime's family against contacting the police. It became a key point in a complex investigation that required detectives to not only solve the tragedy, but to find out if there were any other hidden victims in the story. During her interrogation, Lissa said that in 2020, while working in a cookie factory, she met Jaime Yanchaguano. According to her, he became just a friend. Lissa sought to return to her husband, who was allegedly going to blackmail Jaime to get money from him. David made it clear to his wife that if she did not help him, he would divorce her. Later, David handed Lissa a white powder and told her to slip it into Jaime's food. When the task was completed, Jaime fell asleep and never woke up again. Realizing what had happened, Lissa tried in desperation to get her husband back, but all was unsuccessful, so she swallowed the same poison and gave it to her children. However, it did not have the expected effect on her, and Lissa turned to her neighbors for help, trying to save herself from the same horror that had befallen her children. After her testimony, investigators launched an investigation, but no evidence of David's involvement in the events was ever found. No one close to the couple could have predicted that Lissa Maria and David Acosta's fate would lead them through such a difficult ordeal. When they met, Lissa was only 16 years old and still in high school. She was a dreamy and romantic girl, and David was a strong and determined young man. Soon their friendship developed into strong feelings, and this led to Lissa's unexpected pregnancy. Although the young people's families did not approve of their relationship, David's parents always supported their son and welcomed Lissa into their family. In difficult moments, David's family became a true support for the young couple. Inviting Lissa to live with them, they made every effort to make sure she finished high school. When Lissa turned 18, the lovers got married. 2 years later, the young family was waiting for the appearance of a second child, a little daughter. David's parents decided to provide the young couple with their own housing. They gave Lissa and David a separate apartment, which became for them a corner of family happiness. But over time, the couple's relationship began to deteriorate. It was obvious that both spouses sinned of cheating, which led to mistrust and disappointment. Boundless love, which seemed unshakable, began to weaken. To make matters worse, Lissa complained of psychological abuse from David, which led her to seek help from the police. Eventually, she was granted a protective order, and David was forced to leave the family home. It was at this point that Lissa began to use her position and blackmail David, demanding money for the opportunity to see their joint children. The beginning of September 2020 brought an unexpected challenge into Lissa's life that drastically changed her daily routine. The young mother discovered that her oldest son was suffering from seizures, and in desperation, she went to the emergency room at Baca Ortiz Hospital. After stabilizing the baby's condition, the doctors decided to conduct a series of tests, revealing a focal form of epilepsy, a severe disease that affects a specific part of the brain. The doctors urged Lissa to undergo additional tests, including MRI scans, and to consult with specialists as soon as possible. However, the mother, as if ignoring the seriousness of the situation, decided not to follow these recommendations. A month later, the situation was repeated. Lissa was back in the emergency room with her son suffering from the same symptoms. After reviewing the boy's medical history, the doctors discovered that the mother had somehow failed to fulfill the prescriptions given to her earlier. No tests had been taken, consultations with specialists had not taken place, and it seems that the son had not received the necessary treatment. The doctors, concerned for the child's welfare, once again reminded Lissa of the importance of following medical advice. They warned her that ignoring the doctor's advice could lead to legal consequences, as she could be putting her son's health and well-being at risk. However, this time too, Lissa disregarded the doctor's warning. A couple weeks after discovering her son's illness, she decided to call David. The serious tone in her voice worried David. She informed him that a social worker would be coming to see her shortly to discuss their son's diagnosis and retirement. On the day of the appointment, David showed up, but the social worker was long gone. To brighten the waiting time, Lissa offered him a drink. However, as David drank the drink, he suddenly felt unwell. His condition was worsening, and the social worker had not shown up, so David decided to go home to get something to deal with his discomfort. The next morning, David woke up in a terrible state. He could barely speak because his tongue was numb. Every step caused discomfort, and his eyes hurt. His parents insisted on calling an ambulance. David was taken to the hospital where he spent several days. Tests revealed the presence of a psychoactive substance in his system, but given that he hadn't used anything of the sort, David began to speculate how this could have happened. Eventually, he speculated that perhaps someone had deliberately slipped him some substance in a public place. David was grateful for his life and realized that what had happened could have ended much worse. In early October 2020, Lissa made the decision to hire a nanny for her children. Her cousin Patricia recommended her friend Bertha, a responsible 48-year-old woman looking for work. On Monday, October 5th, Bertha arrived at the young mother's house. Lissa urged her to take a pill that she said helped prevent infection with the COVID-19 virus, an epidemic of which was at its height at the time. Claiming that it was a highly effective natural remedy, Lissa convinced Bertha to swallow the medicine and enter the house. They sat down to discuss the babysitter's childcare duties. A few minutes later, Bertha began to feel sick. She felt a headache. Her stomach began to upset, and eventually she vomited. A short while later, Patricia showed up. It turned out that she had called her cousin repeatedly, but Lissa didn't answer, which alerted Patricia. She decided to check what had happened and immediately went to her house. Upon entering, she found Bertha lying on the couch, who was practically fainting already. Lissa shared with her cousin what had happened and expressed concern. Learning that Lissa still had not called an ambulance, Patricia immediately did so herself. After a while, doctors arrived and sent Bertha to the hospital. The condition of the victim managed to stabilize. Doctors diagnosed poisoning with a toxic substance, which often happens when using various medications. Doctors decided that Bertha did not tolerate some component of the composition of the pills from COVID-19. A few months before this tragic incident, in June of the same year, Lissa's former buddy, Mark Escanto, had died of poisoning. At the time, the cause of his death had gone unnoticed. But now, given all these strange circumstances, Mark's case required additional attention. Investigators scrutinized the deceased's home and found Lissa's fingerprints on the glasses used the night before Mark's death. This fact added new evidence to the investigation, pointing to Lissa's possible involvement in the incident. But suddenly, a new accusation was made against Lissa. Her own family made a shocking report to the police. It turns out that on September 2nd, the family had a family gathering where Lissa offered to let everyone taste a drink of her own making. 7 brothers and sisters of the young woman, as well as their parents, drank the unknown drink and immediately felt sick. Fortunately, no one died, but the 56-year-old mother suffered a stroke. Lissa's father claimed that while the relatives were seeking medical attention, his daughter stole $1,300 from the house. Now the investigation included not only crimes against the children and a former boyfriend, but also an incident that jeopardized the lives and health of her own family members. As it turned out, that wasn't all. Investigators encountered another strange event. In May of that year, Jose Luis Erazo, a friend of Lissa's, was found dead in his home. A few days before, Jose had suddenly disappeared, and neighbors soon smelled a rotting odor, prompting them to contact the authorities. An examination of the body initially revealed nothing suspicious, and was ruled a heart attack. But one of Jose's sisters suspected something strange and hid a bottle of alcohol found in the refrigerator. In addition, Jose's family noticed that some items were missing from the house. It turned out that Lissa and Jose were friends, and when the guy died, the alleged killer contacted his relatives by phone. With a distraught voice, she stated that Jose owed her a large sum of money, and she had to contact the family to repay the debt. This cunning plan did not work, and a little later Lissa called Jose's family again, changing her voice to conceal her identity. Identifying herself as Jose's friend, she claimed that she was pregnant by him and now had to apply for child support. Although Jose's family did not believe these stories, Lissa was not about to give up and made a third attempt to deceive them. She said she knew who was responsible for Jose's death and offered to meet to uncover the details. Had she not been arrested on charges of killing her own children in Haight, the list of victims might have gotten longer. When the media reported the arrest of Lissa, who had poisoned 3 people, Jose's relatives understood. They immediately reported their suspicions to the authorities, and Jose's body was exhumed for forensic examination to determine the true cause of death. The relatives were not mistaken. Traces of poison were found in the remains of the deceased. On December 22, 2020, a hearing was held for Lissa Maria Kaiser for the murder of her 2 children, whose names and photos were classified, and for Jaime Ianchaguano. The trial was conducted virtually due to restrictions related to the spread of the COVID-19 virus. Lissa had been in contact from a social rehabilitation center. The prosecutor's statement said that Lissa gave her children a toxic mixture of insecticides and anti-epileptic drugs. In interrogations, she claimed that she had grown desperate and could not leave her children with her husband David, who did not care for the children. In fact, she admitted that she wished them dead. At the end of the hearing, the judge issued the defendant a court pass and ordered her remanded into custody pending trial. The children's trial next took place in 2021 at the Pichincha Provincial Court. The prosecutor presented a set of evidence to prove Lissa's guilt. Among them were statements by David, who revealed the content of messages the wife had received on the eve of the tragedy. In one of the messages, she claimed that she would take with her what belonged to her, referring to the children. She said she didn't know where her children and herself would go, heaven or hell. But now she felt as if she was in hell. Lissa added that she doesn't expect her husband to forgive her, because she knows he hated her, and now he will hate her even more. David also spoke about his unstable relationship with his wife. At the hearing, the defendant's reconstructed testimony was presented, stating that she took 2 pills that day, called for help, and then passed out. According to the reconstruction conducted by the prosecutor's office, the daughter died while still in bed, and her older brother tried to take a few steps to call for help, but fell and died. The conclusion of the forensic medical examination was extremely clear. The children died as a result of a premeditated crime. The deaths were the result of suffocation caused by pulmonary edema and intoxication caused by a mixture of epilepsy medication and other unspecified substances, presumably insecticides and disinfectant. The prosecution also charged Lissa with the death of Jaime Ianchaguano, whose body was found bricked up in the kitchen. The perpetrator was also suspected of attempting to kill David and members of her own family. The hearing raised the issue of Lissa's irresponsible attitude to her son's health after being diagnosed with localized epilepsy. The mother ignored instructions for further tests and follow-up examinations, and when the boy was hospitalized again, his condition was exacerbated by her own mother's negligence. Warnings from medical professionals did not change her attitude toward her son's treatment, leading to a threatened termination of her parental rights. Lissa's mental health investigations revealed her to be highly emotional and environmentally dependent. She sought constant attention and understanding from others and experienced severe anxiety, when events did not unfold according to her plan. She also exhibited a tendency to self-harm. She attempted to say goodbye to her life at least 3 times, but was unsuccessful each time. Witnesses described her as insecure, attachment-seeking, exhibiting schizoid and erratic behavior. The findings of the psychological analysis also emphasized that on the day of the tragic events, Lisa acted with full awareness of her actions. After a long trial that lasted 10 months, Lisa Maria Kaiser was found guilty of the crime against her children. The Pichincha Provincial Court sentenced her to 34 years and 8 months imprisonment. In addition to this, she was ordered to pay David a compensation of more than $20,000. It was noted in the press that Lisa remained calm throughout the proceedings and only showed emotion when her children were mentioned. The Jaime Yanchaguano murder case, which began in August 2021, appeared to be unfinished. New details were revealed during the court hearings. Lisa admitted giving her friend a white substance mixed with alcohol, but claimed she got it from David. However, the investigation proved otherwise. According to a psychiatrist who interviewed Lisa, she did not want to take Jaime's life. She wanted to intimidate his family so she could then extort money. She did demand $8,000 as ransom. Experts called the plan disorganized, which ultimately led to the crime. In addition, forensic tests revealed that it wasn't that simple. Jaime was found to have poison in his system, and the cause of death was strangulation. The body was found with a shattered ribcage and wire around the neck. Lisa claimed that after her friend died, she decided to bury him under a back room and cement him in. The store owner's testimony confirmed that Lisa bought building materials during the days of Jaime's disappearance. After the parties' arguments, the prosecutor's office requested a new trial in April 2022. At that trial, an additional charge of extortion was filed. Lisa called Jaime's relatives, claiming he was being held by a group of gangsters, and demanded $8,000 for his release. The defense relied on the lack of conclusive evidence that Lisa was involved in Jaime's murder. Nevertheless, she was found guilty and received a 22-year prison sentence, as well as a sentence to pay $5,000 to the victim's mother. While Jaime's trial was underway, the investigation of Mark Escanto and Jose Luis Erazo, Lisa's alleged victims, was nearing completion. Mark Escanto was 48 years old, and tests conducted after his death revealed traces of the same substance that Lisa had given to her children. In addition, Mark was found to have severe inflammation of the stomach. The family's lawyer claimed that Lisa met Mark, offered him a beer, and then put the poison in the drink. A glass with Lisa and Mark's fingerprints, as well as a swab containing the woman's DNA, was provided to authorities. Alleged motives for the murder included jealousy and money. It is also known that Lisa had asked Mark to help her financially, and there is evidence that he loaned her at least $120. Mark was Lisa's first known victim. The final outcome of this case, as well as that of Jose Luis Erazo, remain unknown. They may not have been reported in the press, or the investigation may not yet have reached the stage of being formally charged and brought to trial. At the time of her brutal crimes, Lisa Maria was only 26 years old. Her high-profile criminal case has become one of the most horrific and disturbing in Ecuador's recent history. These crimes made her known throughout the country as Doña Venado. Lisa Maria Kaiser is recognized as a serial killer in Ecuador. Her victims have endured terrible suffering, and their relatives have suffered unbearable pain. The charges include 5 murders and 9 attempted murders. Under Ecuadorian law, the maximum sentence she could face is 40 years in prison. That means Lisa could be released when she turns 70 years old. It is still unclear what motivated Doña Venado to commit such horrific acts. Was her act the result of resentment for not getting what she expected in life? Many speculate that the motive was money, and in David's case, Lisa acted out of a lust for revenge, which led to the tragedy with her children. The most horrific part of this story is not only the number of victims left in the path of Doña Venado, but also the fate of 2 innocent children who could not have guessed that their mother, who gave them life, would take it away so absurdly and cruelly. Thanks for watching, guys. Jack was with you. Subscribe to the channel and don't forget to click the bell not to miss new stories from around the world. See you soon. Take care.